Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Secrets of Face Reading, How to Read Anyone Instantly. This is your host, dandy, delightful, and somewhat delirious, Sir David of Snyder, or Dr. David, as I'm often called. How's everybody doing today? Go ahead and type where you're checking in from and whether you're a first timer or not in Planet David, and we'll go ahead and get started. Susan Miller says, about damn time. Could you hear us arguing back and forth on the chat, saying all kinds of nasty things about you guys? Texas back again for me, says Tim Fox. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So, people are filling in, right? So today's class is on the art and science, and there is both to this, face reading and how to use the techniques of Chinese face reading, along with some of the more advanced techniques of neuroscience and body language reading, kinesics, and things of that nature, to profile people, to really kind of get an insight into how people think and feel and behave. The scope of Chinese medicine, it spans over 2,500 years of Chinese observational science. Now, some people think of Chinese medicine as more of an art than a science, but there's a very different approach. Everything is done through observation and the establishment of pattern recognition. So before we jump into today's stuff, there's a few administrative things that that I want to get out of the way. First and foremost, like I started with, if this is your first time, go ahead and type first timer in the chat. And know the bookshelf behind me is a virtual bookshelf, although that is a picture of my real bookshelf, in case you were wondering. I actually missed my bookshelf when I moved my studio from downstairs to upstairs. Because the studio downstairs has no air conditioning. And so in 100-degree heat, that's not the best place to be doing a webinar. So I took a snapshot of my bookcase downstairs and I use it as a virtual backdrop. So I feel more at home that way. Couple of administrative things. If this is your first time, if politically incorrect language, colorful metaphors, swearing, or the word boobies offends you, this is probably not the best use of your time. My intention is never to offend anyone, but it is kind of to have fun, not take ourselves so seriously, to kind of poke fun at the overly sensitive, politically correct masses. And so if those kinds of things are not your cup of tea, you might want to consider maybe moving on to someone who's a little bit more PC. Jacob Bell says boobies. Okay. Anyway, so that's first and foremost. If this were a live event, which it is live, but we're not in the same room together, I would say, this means I know the answer. This means I don't. This means, oh shit, I hope he doesn't call on me next, right? So this means yes. This means no, there will be a test. We're gonna talk a little bit about the different aspects of face reading from a Chinese medical perspective. We're gonna talk and compare and contrast about how it relates to the more modern approaches to understanding facial expressions, facial features, things of that nature. For those of you who this is not your first time in Planet David, go ahead and type that in the chat. And for those of you who are here for a first time, there's a very big reason that I asked for these things. I love feedback. I love interactiveness. But one of the things I'm going to tell you, I'm going to talk to you about things we've got coming up, offers that we put together to help you learn this stuff faster from the privacy of your own home, but also where you get the biggest bang for your buck, which is basically in our live events. And so if for some reason, as I'm going through the chat webinar and things like that, you ask a question and I don't get to it, those of you who've had some experience, the veterans in Planet David, go ahead and type in if you're a veteran in the chat. And please feel free to jump in and answer those questions. And if I see them, I'll get to them as fast as I can. If not, then I will rely on my veterans and my Platinum Club members to answer those questions for you. So a couple of things. If you were budgeting 90 minutes for a webinar, this is not, I don't do regular standard webinars. Yes, there is an offer. We'll be showing you how to take these skills to the next level. If this is the scope of everything that there is to learn in Chinese face reading and how it applies to life, we have time for this. So my job in the time that we have is to take you as far as I can in the 30, 60, 90 minutes, 3 hours, whatever it is that we're going to be on, and point you in the direction of where to go for more. So if you stay on till the end of the webinar, I will share with you some very powerful, very important things, but my webinars are not standard. In other words, Usually what happens is when you log on to a webinar, a person spends 20 minutes of fluff, and then they talk about a few things that tease you, and then they give you an offer, and then they answer your questions. That is not how my webinars tend to work. Although I do understand that a lot of people are trained in that idea. So here's how things are going to work today. From the time I finish my intro, which is basically who am I and why am I here, I'm going to circle into the most immediately applicable and useful aspects of face reading that you can take out into the world right away and start putting to work. I'm going to do that for about an hour-ish. I'm going to tell you about, I'm going to segue into the programs we put together, the packages that we put together for you, and I'm going to point you in the direction of how to get the best deal possible. Once that's done, I'm going to circle back and I'm going to continue to teach, and I'm going to continue to teach for another 30, 60, 90 minutes, depending on what the questions are that you have and where we go in the information. Is that fair? Is it okay to do it that way for you? If it's okay, just go ahead and type that in the chat for me. Cool. All right. So one of the things that I really like about our particular approach to webinars is that even though I come in with a preset idea of what I want to talk about, a lot of what I want to talk about centers around what you want to learn about most. And so every webinar, even though we tend to cover the same categories or the same areas of information, they tend to be more customized to the vibe of the attendees in the class. So that being said, for the benefit of the people who haven't seen me before, and I'm going to ask real quick, do you guys prefer if I show a PowerPoint, or do you guys just like looking at me like this? Which is more fun for you? I'm not a big PowerPoint guy, but I'm happy to share there are certain points where I'll skip to PowerPoints. All right, so let's talk about this guy, David Snyder. Who the hell is David Snyder, and why should he care? First of all, this is the right place for you if you are looking for a way to rapidly and quickly understand how people think and feel and behave. If you're a therapist or a counselor or a coach, and you're looking for ways to rapidly uncover people's hidden stuff, whether that's repressed emotion, hidden traumas, how they feel about or relate to authority, things of that reference or that nature, this is a good place for you. If you'd like to understand how to use those techniques and those technologies to understand how people think and feel and behave and influence them better, then this is a good place for you. If you're interested in using these things for romantic applications, in other words, maybe you want to find somebody who's sexually, romantically compatible for you, then this is something that you're going to want to pay attention to. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with my work, who is Dr. David Snyder and why should I care? First and foremost, I'd like you to know that I am an actual doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. I graduated from Pacific College of Oriental Medicine in 2019. I've been a practicing acupuncturist since 2005. I just finished my doctorate program. My focus has been on treating various forms of physiological illness that has as its roots repressed emotion. That's what I've been doing from a medical perspective. So in my practice, I deal with the full spectrum of psycho-emotional or psychosomatic illness, everything from chronic anxiety, post-traumatic stress, all the way up to terminal cancer, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, and the full spectrum. So we have a huge, huge well of understanding into the dynamics of how we think and how we feel and how we behave relates to the topic of today. We also, for those of you who didn't know, I'm also, this year I was voted the #1 NLP trainer in the world by globalgurus.org. And I've authored over 15 different products on various forms of human influence. Everything from how to heal people through conversation hypnosis, how to be more successful in your dating and romantic life, how to close more sales, influence judges and juries, jury selection, every form of human influence. That's what I do. I'm a student of human influence. For 3 years prior to this, I was voted the #2 NLP trainer in the world next to Richard Bandler this year. Because of wonderful folks like you, we now move to the #1 slot. And it's one of the reasons is because that we've always looking for ways to help you learn this and understand these things better. Interestingly, globalgurus.org, I didn't know they were going to do this, but globalgurus.org sent me an email a few months back letting me know that my course, I'll read this to you, Dr. David. It is with great pleasure to announce that your training program, Killer Influence, has been chosen by global peers and ranked as the #1 best program in the world for NLP. NLP, for those of you who don't know, stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. We've attached a logo for you to add to your program. And so if you go to their page, you'll see right there is the, the courses that we were competing with. I didn't even know I was even entered in this. And face reading and cold reading are actually a big part of the NLP Killer Influence programs that we do. So I'm also a Grandmaster 10th degree black belt in Ryukyu Kempo Karate. I have a 4th degree black belt in Shaolin Kung Tao, 2nd degree black belt in Kosho Kempo, 1st degree in Fankuru, and of course I'm a certified instructor in Combat Sistema, Cinco Mano Eskrima, and Modern Arnis. And I've been running a clinic in Solana Beach where I've been focusing on treating physiological illness that has as its roots repressed emotion since 2005. So one might ask, what do all these things have in common? What does this have to do with face reading? Well, it comes down to one word, and that word is pattern recognition. When we start looking at human beings, and especially when we talk about looking at the features and the attributes of the face, everything that we do and everything that where NLP and martial arts and Chinese medicine all come together is in this idea of patterns, patterns that repeat at different levels of thought, different levels of behavior, different levels of belief. And so when we learn to see the world and understand it through these recurring patterns, the universe can open its secrets up to us, and we can begin to use those patterns and predict how if we insert one variable at a certain piece in the process, we can influence and redirect people. But we can also predict what a person is most likely to do, or how they're most likely to receive the messages that we're sending based on the architecture of their face, which has its roots genetic predispositions as well as lifestyle ramifications. So if you're interested in becoming super attractive to the opposite sex, or making them find you charming and fascinating and irresistible, face reading is one of the fast tracks to that. Be very, very careful. When people discover that you understand how to read faces, they will be simultaneously fascinated and terrified of you at the same time. People will literally line up around the corner for you to tell them about their favorite subject themselves. That being said, when you start to tell people and you start to unpack certain features, be a little bit more careful and compassionate and mindful about the way you describe some of these traits. People, when you start talking about their stuff, become very, very suggestible. They become very, very sensitive, because you're literally, as my colleague Chase Hughes likes to say, you're peeling back in many cases those social and personal masks that they create, that they want to show the world. And you can make someone feel very, very uplifted, or you can just trash them by understanding how these traits work and how to express them. So again, be very, very mindful of that when you're doing this. If you're looking to banish fear and insecurity from your life, maybe radiate more confidence and assertiveness and power, this is, again, face reading is one of those skill sets, and it's a skill. It's a skill that anyone can learn that will allow you to understand people, so you know who you need to be able to control that situation. If you're looking to make more money on your job, book more clients in your business, or get a raise or promotion, face reading can give you a dramatic edge in understanding your clients. In other words, knowing what to do and what to say to them, or what not to say to them in many cases, that allows them to feel more comfortable with you. If you're looking to protect yourself from manipulators and easily handle difficult people, once again, face reading is one of those ways that you can really just get an instant snapshot into what people are thinking or feeling, okay? If you'd like to know about financial success and abundance, you can look at certain facial features and know who's gonna have an easier or harder time in those areas. So, and for those of you who, I know nobody here wants to do this, but if you want to just be able to put the whammy on people and actually like have them become super suggestible to you and have them hanging on your every word, then face reading is one of the fastest ways to induce a very powerful hypnotic trance state in people. Because the moment you start unpacking facial features, especially when you score, they go into a profound, highly suggestible trance state. They view you as an authority in their world because you're demonstrating a knowledge about them that you couldn't have known any other way. So it shouldn't be confused with cold reading. Cold reading is where we look at people and we make guesses that are based on again, patterns. So there's some similarities in terms of the effect that it can have on people, but the difference between cold reading and face reading is that when you actually unpack somebody's facial features, it's because you know things that are actually have a high probability of being true based on a very different, it's not a guess anymore. And that's one of the cool things about this. A lot of the guesswork is minimized. If you combine the two, now you have a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts. If you combine that with hypnotic language, like we teach in CPI or killer influence, now you have almost a literally unstoppable method of influencing as well as reading and understanding people. Is that sound useful? Timothy's asking, can you explain the unpacking process and how to get rid of past issues? Yes, you can point to it. There's other ways to do it. There's lots of ways to unpack. In fact, I have a whole class that's devoted to learning how to find and unpack these things. So lots of ways that you can do that. And I'll talk to you about them, okay? So my personal promise to you is if you stay until the end, again, I'm gonna teach as much as I can in the first hour to 90 minutes or so. And then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna transition. I'm gonna talk about some of the training opportunities that we have coming up for you. And then I'm gonna point you in the direction of where to go to take advantage of that. And then I'm gonna circle back and I'm going to continue to teach, and we're going to just dig as deep into these things as you want to go. But there's certain things that I always cover in a webinar, certain things that I think are just the absolute important go-to things about face reading. And then based on the questions that you ask, we'll drill down on some of the more esoteric sides of it. If you want to know about romance and sexual compatibility, we can do that. You want to talk about trauma history or unpacking traumas, we can do that. If you want to understand charisma, or what the Chinese call peach luck, we can do those things. But the whole point is there's a very solid format that we're going to follow, but you won't get all the goodies until you stay, unless you stay for the end. So if you've budgeted 90 minutes, you're going to have pretty much what you need to know to start doing face reading right away. And you're going to be able to know how to take the next step. For those of you who want to just absorb as much as possible and get that personalized class, stay through the end. Allegra's budgeted the next 4 hours because she knows me, right? So that's kind of where we're going. We'll show you how to become a master of people reading and how to use those skill sets to influence people in a very, very powerful and significant way. So here's where it gets cool. Here's where I get to ask you, my panel, my fans, my first timers, in terms of face reading, what do you want to learn about today? What's the biggest question that you'd like the answer to, that you would like to be able to use face reading for? So go ahead, take a couple minutes, think about what it is you want to know about, why it's important to you, what's important to you about it, and go ahead and type it in the chat so I know how to direct the coursework for the day. When people are telling truth versus lying, okay, that's a very common one, by the way. Health, okay. Emotional releasing, all right. What else we got? And for those of you watching on YouTube, my biggest apologies. For some mysterious reason, YouTube and Zoom are not getting along today. I tested it earlier and it was fine, but for some reason, it's just not working. So Brandon is actually manning the YouTube live chat box, and he's actually going to start transferring your questions over to this chat so we can read them. Okay, soul age from the eyes. Okay, I'm not sure if I can do that one. Emotional release. A lot of people are interested in emotional release, truth versus lying, how to get rid of the lines between the brows. Okay. Okay, so maybe what we'll do, and this is how I think we'll do it, I guess for the next hour or so, we're going to talk about the must-knows. In other words, how people think, what people want you to know versus what they don't want you to know. And then we're going to talk about emotions, how people are emotionally conceal their emotional or mark their emotional life on their face. We'll do our offer. We'll circle back. We'll go into deeper skills. John Masters is asking about soft skills, reading clients. Okay. Everything you're about to get in the next hour or so is going to be directly relevant to the questions that you asked. When we come back from our offer, we'll start looking at additional face reading cues and attributes that we can look at, as well as how to clear them, if that's where you want to go. Lying is actually pretty easy to detect depending on what system you're going to pull from. And we're going to talk about the difference between what I've come to call active profiling systems versus passive profiling systems. they're very complementary, but I don't want you to confuse what we're about to cover with things like microexpressions or applied behavioral analysis, things of that nature. I'm going to do a little compare and contrast as we go through this, just to give you guys a better understanding of it. But by and large, I consider face reading, especially from the Chinese medical perspective, to be what I call a passive profiling process, whereas applied behavior and kinesics are microexpressions are what I call active profiling. Okay, is that clear? Does that sound like a plan for everybody? Is everybody good with that? Go ahead and type it into chats. Cool. All right, cool. So let me go ahead and jump to my OneNote, and we're going to start looking at how people think. How people think. Oops. Okay. So when we start looking at how, can you all, by the way, can you all see this particular screen? Has heaven, human, earth, understanding how people think? Okay, cool. So this is the first thing that we need to understand when we look at somebody. Now, my teacher, by the way, that I learned most of this from, and I've had many teachers in various forms of profiling and human behavior. Lillian Bridges is my teacher and still my teacher in Chinese face reading. I've studied Paul Ekman's work. I've studied a lot of stuff by Joe Navarro and people in that field, and they've got some great stuff. Chase Hughes is a good friend of mine. And we're becoming closer as time goes on because there's a lot of complementary stuff. But one of the things that I want to talk about first and foremost, when we design systems, let me jump back to face-to-face for a minute. When I design this system, I don't like to have to be like right in somebody's face before I can start extracting information. In our course, Killer Influence, which you heard me reference earlier, I talk about what we call the I3 influence model. I3 stands for identity, intelligence, and influence. Identity is all about you. It's all about the characteristics, the skills, the strengths. Chris, don't worry, I'll show it to you in a minute. All about the skills, the strengths, the attributes that you have that you can employ in a certain influence situation that you can bring to bear. It also encompasses your boundaries, what you will do, what you won't do. I2 of the Killer Influence model is about intelligence. And intelligence is in the terms of information. In other words, how much information can you proactively gather about your subjects in terms of their environment, the context, their emotional background, their socioeconomic upbringing, their genetic predispositions. The more of this information that you have about a subject being the person you're profiling, the easier it is to influence them. If you're taking notes, write this down. This is a quote that was passed on to me by my instructor in kinesic interview and interrogation, Professor Danny Johnson from Oklahoma State University. And he said to me, if I know you better than you know me, I can influence you. If I know you better than you know yourself, I can control you. And this is where face reading and its related disciplines can start to really give us an advantage. And when I say advantage, I don't mean an advantage in a malevolent way. I mean an advantage that allows us to relate to people and connect with people in a way that they feel truly heard and understood, that allows us to help and heal them, to motivate them and inspire them, and in many cases, as a way to protect ourselves from people who may not have our best interests at heart and only care about getting what's good for them. Does that sound useful? Type that in the chat if you think that's useful. Okay, so when we start, and again, I like to do things from a place of safety. So in other words, if in a lot of our systems, especially when we're looking at things like microexpressions or facial gestures or facial cues like blink rate and pupil dilation, these are things that are what we call active profiling techniques. And they're very powerful and they're very useful in certain contexts, but they require you to literally be here, like in the person's face. And the problem with that is that the closer you are to somebody interactively, there's a lot more you have to manage. So when I created my systems, I wanted to be able to give people the ability to extract information from a place of safety, things that I can see from across the room, right? Things that I can extrapolate from without having to memorize a long list of complicated information. And so one of the very first things that jumped out at me when I was going through the Chinese systems and when I started to reorganize it for you was, what's the fastest, easiest way to know how somebody thinks? And you can determine that. What was the second sentence about control? All right, here it is again. If I know you better than you know me, I can influence you. If I know you better than you know yourself, I can control you. And that is more true than not. The problem with a lot of the influence, and we live, right now, we're in the world's largest psychological operations petri dish. There are huge amounts of mind control and psychological influence techniques being leveraged on you every moment of every day. And now because of the COVID, because of all these other things, it's even worse because now our amygdalas are being hijacked. And so we're being thrown into these pathological trance states with little or no idea how they're doing it or what effect it's having on us. Even those of us who think we're not under the control of those kinds of influences many times we are. And here's another saying that I teach all of my Killer Influence students, and I invite you to come to Killer Influence if it's something that you think might help give you an advantage in your life in the future. And this one goes like this: anything outside of your awareness is outside of your control. Anything outside of your awareness is outside of your control. Just because it's outside of your awareness does not mean it's not controlling you. Okay? So part of my job as a teacher is to help you as a practitioner, as an agent of influence, the person who's at the cause in your world, to give you the ability to become more self-aware so you can make choices based on awareness, right? Because without awareness, there is no choice. So let's look at these three zones of the head. When we look at the head now, if we understand the relative proportions of each of these zones, it's going to give us immediate insight into how people think. Now, why is that important? Because some people are very data oriented. Some people are very pragmatic. They don't care about the data. They want to know what the shit's going to do for them first. Some people are very gut driven, or very instinctive, or very emotional. And we're going to talk about how to look at that and where we're going with it. And what I want you to extrapolate from this next module on how people think is what order and sequence to present information to people, okay? Every human being on the planet consumes data and manages data. They have a practical side that they want, a practical need or desire that they want to fulfill, and they have an instinct or gut response. Okay, these are the three elements that we're going to look at first on the face. And by understanding how to understand the proportions that come out in certain, and the characteristics and attributes connected to certain facial proportions, you're going to be able to extrapolate the order and sequence to give people information that is in harmony with the way they think, so they can consume the information you give them in the most pleasurable and natural way for them. The less cognitive friction a person has, the more likely they are to accept your message and act upon it. So let's go back to our screen and we'll look at this. Okay, so here's the whole picture. And what you see here is if you divide the zones of the face into three areas, just above the eyebrows to about the hairline. So again, it's a little bit misleading here. I was taught, even though the picture here says it's a little bit above, I would say if you take the line from just about the eyebrows to where the hairline starts, and I usually go with the widow's peak or whatever, but it's a judgment call for you, right? I might go up here, right? This area in Chinese medicine is known as the heaven zone. And this relates to data. In other words, somebody with a very large upper zone, I hate to pick on him because he's helping me with everything, but hold on a second, insert. Oh, it's not gonna let me do it. All right, let me close this, make this a little bit smaller. So people, with a large upper zone are very data driven. These are people that if you come to them and they've got a very large forehead, they're going to want to know where's your data that supports it. Give me the information, I'll draw my own conclusions. Okay. There we go. So these people are very data driven. So I hate to pick on him, but my good friend and colleague Brandon Burr, who's actually co-hosting this event, if you were to look at Brandon, and I don't know if I have a picture of him, but if you've ever seen Brandon, he's really, really upper zone dominant. And hold on a second, let me erase this so I don't confuse people. He's really, really upper zone dominant. Would you consider heaven similar to metal? No, David, I wouldn't necessarily make that generalization that heaven is similar to metal. In fact, I would say it's actually not. One of the ways that you judge metallic personalities, and David has a background in Chinese 5-element theory, so for those of you who don't know what a metal element is or metal personality, the Chinese divided everything into yin and yang and the 5 elements. And there are certain personality characteristics and attributes related to each of those 5-element designations. We're not gonna, this particular class is not designed for people who have a background in Chinese medicine. It's designed to give you something you can take out into the field right away. So one of the things that we want you to start to look at is the relative size of each of these zones. If the upper zone is big, they're very data driven. Okay. If the middle zone is larger, these people are more pragmatic. These people want to know, what's it going to do for me? Right? How's it going to help me? At the risk of one of my more notorious colleagues in the attraction and sexuality field used to say, how is that going to get me more oral sex? Right? If you would ask him, you would come to him and you would say, what about this and what about that? And couldn't you do this? He would say, well, how's that going to help me get X, Y, Z, right? Very large middle zone. So people with a larger middle zone tend to be more pragmatic, or not pragmatic, pragmatic. And so when you come to these people and you see that large zone, you want to lead with, here's what it's going to do for you. And then you follow up with one of the other zones. So let's say, for example, that you've got somebody who's got a very large middle zone. And then the next largest zone is their data side. And then their third largest zone is their earth side, or their emotional instinctive side. You would want to lead with what your product or service is going to do to them, what the practical benefits are going to gain from it. Then you're going to want to give them the data that supports it. And then you're going to talk to them about how much they love it and they should just trust their gut and go with it. So it's what this particular process gives you, these 3 zones gives you, is a way to know what order and sequence, NLP calls that a syntax, what order and sequence to give people information in. Does that make sense? If you get that, type it in the chat. So to answer David's question, one of the ways that you can when you look at metallic features, just for those of you who are interested, and by the way, metal people tend to be more on the finicky side. They're more on the they're very sensitive to a lack of order. They're not just organized, they're orderly. And so when you look at people, let me go back to, stop sharing for a second. So let me pull up my desk here and I'll see if I can extrapolate for you the difference between somebody who's organized and somebody who's orderly. So let me adjust my camera just a little bit. Okay. Forgive my my webcam. I'm trying to get so you can see my. All right, that's not working at all. Okay, that's so much for that idea. Okay. Anyway, all right. So anyway, let's say I have a bunch of items on my desk here. Okay, and I tell somebody who is very woody, for example, to organize the desk. Okay. A person who organizes my desk might go, okay, here, here. All right, we're done. That's a wood person. Okay. However, somebody who's more metallic, they're going to be more like, and they're going to be lining things up and making sure everything is just orderly, just finished just right. That's a very metallic quality. And so if you all know people like this, one of the ways that you can begin to determine if somebody has that quality to them is by looking at the amount of space between each of their features, right? If you look at my, for instance, I actually have a bit of metal in me. I have a lot of wood in me, but I have a lot of metal too. So if you look at the spaces between like my eyes and my eyebrows, the length of my nose, actually I used to have a very straight nose until I ran into a baseball, and that kind of made me more bossy. But metallic people tend to have very aquiline, very refined features. There's a lot of space between them because metal and the metal psychology is about boundaries. It's about separating your foods on the plates. It's about separating you organize your books by size rather than by content. It's just about being very different. And I think you can lapse into different elements based on context. I think context is a huge identifier in what element you express at any given time. But remember, don't worry about metal or fire or wood or anything like that. This course does not require you to know anything about 5-element psychology or anything like that. We organized it in a way that you can just take this material out and start using it without any of that. Okay, and so the first thing we want to look at is upper, middle, lower zones. Upper zone people are very data driven. When you present to them, if this is their dominant zone, you want to lead with that. If their middle zone, the pragmatic zone, is more dominant, you want to lead with that. If their lower zone, which is more instinctive or gut driven or emotional, you want to lead with that. And then you want to base, and again, this is basically something you can eyeball. The idea is you want to figure out what's their dominant or primary, and their secondary and their tertiary. And then you organize your information, your presentation based on that. And this is something you can extrapolate on a Zoom call. It's something you can extrapolate on a video chat, or you can do it from across the room. And that's why I like it, because I can look at somebody without having to interact with them, which is cool for me because I can, let's say, for example, you haven't been through our state control training in CPI or killer influence or whatever, and you're not ready to interact yet. You're formulating your approach pattern. If you've been through rapid attraction secrets or killer influence, you know that we actually have approach protocols that we teach. In other words, how to survey a room, how to survey who you want to approach for whatever context, everything from networking to dating. And then how you go into a room, you get your state and your identity set up, and then you make your approach. This is part of that proactive profiling process because I can do this from complete safety from across the room. I can extrapolate based on what I see, what kind of information I need to lead with. And then when I get my whole system ready, I can approach and I can present in a way that is in harmony with how they normally digest information anyway. Is that useful? Go ahead and type in the chat if you think it's useful. If not, I'll move on. Cool. Excellent. All right, so that's really, in a nutshell, a quick and easy way to understand how people think. Now, we can go very, very deep into that. We can just keep going down. I mean, there's charts in Chinese medicine that map out moles and things that are going to happen to you all the way up to age 120 or 170 in the face. It gets really crazy, but let's look at things that we can just take out and use right away, okay? So let's jump back to the next phase, which is about what people want you to see and what they want to conceal, right? Who they are in public, who they are in private. Would that be useful to be able to kind of look at somebody and peel back their social masks, so to speak, to kind of understand things about who they are in public versus who they are in private? We're going to look, and again, everything that I'm teaching you is designed to be used integratively. In other words, I'm teaching you 3 zones of the head on its own. I'm teaching you social or what we call public and private masks on its own. I'm going to teach you emotional mapping on its own. The idea is you begin to integrate these together and begin to extrapolate and create a profile that you can use. In our face reading certification level 1, we go from the hairline all the way down and cut. We spend almost 3 days just on eyes, all the things you can unpack about the eyes. So there's always more that you can learn. But we need something right here, right now that we can just take out into the world and start using. So let's look at social masks. We look at people's social masks. This relates to, sorry, let me just, oops, let me turn the writing part off. What are we really talking about? We're talking about what people want you to see versus what they don't want you to see. So when you look at a person, the right side of their body, one second, I can't. Their right side is equal to their public face. Not pubic face, that's a very different class for a very different day. The right side of their face is their public face. The left side is their private face. This is the face, this is the face they show only a treasured few. When you ask about public versus private, we're talking about true right versus true left. So if they raise their right hand, the hand that they raised is their public side. Now, my colleague Chase Hughes, in his course on behavioral engineering and behavioral influence, he talks about working with people's social masks. In other words, how to peel them back or how to tonify those masks so that they become, so you can give them permission to do things. This is a really powerful way to know in a very easy, very understandable way where people spend most of their time. What they're, in the next course, we're going to unpack the emotional maps, the emotional triggers that people have. So when we look at the next level, we want to ask ourselves, no, Timothy, that's over. Timothy says, does that flip if they're lefties? The answer is no. This is one of the few times, because like NLP will tell you that if a person looks up, NLP, one second. NLP, up left, when their eyes go up left, they're doing visual recall. Up right, visual construct, which means they're making pictures. And that this changes based on whether somebody is right-handed or left-handed. That does not apply here. This is, fortunately for us, one of the few places where we don't have to make allowances for gender. So let me explain that really quick. The Chinese say that the left side is yin and the right side is yang. When we look at like trauma history on people, and we look at the chronology of life events that mark people's faces, women's lifelines, to which side does the test above the temples apply? Okay, I don't know what you're talking about, Jeanette. To which side did the test above the temples? I don't understand that. You have to rephrase the question. But what I'm saying is, if you look at age markers, 0 to conception is on the left side, goes to 8 to 7 years old here, transfers to the right side to about 13, and then jumps to the center. Okay, you invert that for men. So men are always on the left, women start on the right. Okay, so again, just at the risk of confusing you, that is not the case with public versus private sides. That's why it's so reliable. And one of the things you want to look at, especially in this zone here, when we start looking at public versus private sides, what you want to look at is which eye is bigger. Generally speaking, the more held open an eye is, the bigger the eye is, the more outgoing and willing to take in information a person is. The more closed the eye tends to be, or the more smaller the eye tends to be, the more guarded and aloof, dissociated they tend to be. So one of the things that we want to look at when we start looking at public versus private side, where are the markings bigger? Where are they deeper? Because the deeper and bigger the markings, the more intense the emotions connected to it or the activities connected to it. Does that make sense? If you understand where I'm getting at, go ahead and type that in the chat. Cool. All right. Do you see how this might be useful for people? Okay, Linda says not quite. So let's go back to our picture. Do not understand the last piece of information. Okay, so let's go back to our picture. When you look at somebody's face, okay, let me pull up a notepad really quick. The left side of their face tells you who they are when nobody's around, or when they're with their most intimate and private friends. Okay, this will take on more meaning and relevance to you when we go to the next phase, or the next module, which is all about emotional mapping. When you look at somebody's left side of their face, and you have to do it through their left eye, what you're going to see is the kind of person they are when nobody's looking, the kind of person they are behind closed doors, the kind of person they are when they're only interacting with their most trusted, intimate friends, and sometimes not even then. Okay? When you look at the right side, which is considered the inside, okay? This is the face they show the world. This is the face that they want you to assume is who they are, okay? So from a interaction or an influence standpoint, if I want to create vulnerability in somebody, if I want them to start to really kind of dissociate or become very malleable on a deep validation level, I'm going to peel back their social mask. I'm going to talk to the person. I'm going to talk to the person's left side persona. If I want somebody to behave in a way that's congruent with their public self-image, I'm going to look at these traits, and I'm going to do things that build up or amplify that persona. For those of you who aren't familiar with some of my work, I talk about, I'm going to type this in the chat. No, actually, no, I'll do it here. Thank you, David. So one of the things that we want to look at is, again, people will become vulnerable. When we talk about resistance to persuasion, there's 4 types of resistance. First is reactance. We call this the fuck you factor. If I were to push on David, and David didn't ask to be pushed, he's gonna lock his stance. He's gonna push back either physically or psychologically or verbally. That's called reactance. That's the first type. The second type is any perceived threat to self. This would be our our private side. The second is any threat we perceive to how other people see us. And the final one is threat to truth, and anything we've accepted as true. So these are the roots of most forms of resistance to persuasion that you're going to get. How does this relate to these public and private sides? First and foremost, assuming that you're seeking the influence that you're seeking to wield has been welcomed, you will neutralize reactance. Okay. But if you want to mitigate resistance, you have to be very careful about what the left side of the person's face is telling you. If you want to work with, if you want people to live up to their stereotypes, live up to their image, you want to deal with them as if they were the right-sided person. So in a business context where image is very important, we want to stroke their ego. We want to stroke the persona, the mask they want to show the world. If we want them to, if we want to actually weaken their sense of self, if we want them to become more vulnerable to us, we want to talk to their right side, or their private side. Do you see how it connects to influencing people? If you get it, go ahead and type that in the chat for me so I know I haven't lost you. Okay, so we're clear on public versus private. In other words, when you start to unpack the sides of a person, Gustavo is asking, what do you mean talk to a certain side? Well, there's a couple of ways you can play with this. When I talk to somebody, depending on the context, I want to kind of discern which version of this person do I want to talk to. Do I want to talk to the mask that they show the world? Let me go back to this. Do I want to talk to the mask that they show the world? In other words, people have a certain image that they project out to everybody around them. And that face, the things that are more integral to that self-image that they're showing the world can be seen on the right side of their face, their public side. So when I meet with them and I talk to them in any form of professional interaction, I necessarily don't want to make them feel vulnerable. I want to make them feel in charge, in control, because if they feel in charge and in control, they're far more likely, believe it or not, to do what I want in that context. Okay, because if I start to unpack their private side, they're going to get defensive. And defensiveness doesn't get you your outcome more often than not. Now, we flip the script. If I want to facilitate and create a deep connection with somebody, then I want to talk to the person I see marked on the left side of the face. Because now, as I talk to that part of them, they're going to become more vulnerable. And when they experience that vulnerability and it's rewarded, in other words, the things that they share, the things they admit to, the things that allow them to connect, they get a good feeling about it, they open up more. How do you talk to the left side? You can actually look at them, you take both of your eyes, look at them in the left eye. Or you can take your left eye and look at them through their left eye. In classical influence perspectives, we have this thing called the hypnotic gazing. One of them is actually taking your right or left eye and looking through the particular eye you want to talk to. From a biological or neurological perspective, if I'm looking in their left eye, I'm talking to their right brain. If I'm looking in their right eye, I'm talking to their left brain, which is the linear logical side. So you can mesh your neuroscience with that. You combine that with proprioceptive awareness and mirror neurons, and you've got a very, very powerful combination of tools that synergistically allow you to influence people. But now we're talking about just unpacking behaviors. But do you see how this could be useful? Yes or no? Yes or yes, as T. Harv Eker would say. Okay. And it's immediately useful, isn't it? Right? That's what I mean. I mean, like I said, there's so much in this, but these are the things, once again, now we can look at somebody from across the room and we can know exactly how they think. Are they data driven? Are they practical? Are they instinctive? What order and sequence do I do this? Do I give them the information? This is before we start unpacking their values and all this other stuff, right? And then I'm going to look at public versus private. Who are they in public? What are the things that, are they open more publicly? Are they less open? Are they more frustrated publicly or privately? You're going to learn that in the next module, right? But you need to understand 3 zones, right and left, before we go there. Does that make sense? Type it in the chat. I need to know because I'm insecure that way. Becca's dad. Yes, cool. All right, very good. All right, any questions about right and left zones before we move on? Yes, 8, have noticed after negativity clearing that the skin in the private side becomes worse. Okay. What was it? His name went by so fast I didn't see it. Islam, save that question and we will put a pin in it. We will address it after we come back from our offer. Harder to see eyes in a Zoom call. Is it received energetically? Yes. One of the things that's going to happen, and those of you who've been through face reading, either the Chinese medical hypnotherapy class that I taught, or who have done face reading level 1, here's one of the weird things. If you're doing face reading therapeutically, right, and there's a huge body of information for doing this therapeutically, I call face reading Chinese vibrational psychotherapy. It's literally the talk therapy of Chinese medicine. And what happens is when you unpack facial features and they resolve the emotion connected to the feature, that marking changes. The wrinkles go away, the feature either gets bigger or smaller. It's bizarre. But you can literally take before and after pictures, a picture at the beginning of a face reading and the same person at the end of the face reading, same lighting, same wall, same everything, and the faces are different. For those of you who've had that experience, type it in the chat so those of us who are calling bullshit can see. Yeah, just if you want to know which is which, just raise your right hand. Your right hand is always public. Your left hand is always private, right? And it will be the same with them. So it doesn't matter if you're trying to do whatever. Their right hand is always their public side. Their left hand is always their private side. Doesn't change. Timothy Fox says, got rid of some lines already. Lily says, was coaching a man and watched the lines between his eyes disappear. Yes. Allegra says, and transfer is done over Zoom or even video. Had it happen? Yes. These things, I've literally had people's eyebrow bones go poof, and just pop out like a turkey, the little temperature thing on a turkey when it's cooked at the end of a session. Brad says, David, you look younger than last year. Well, thank you. I am working on myself. I just got to take enough herbs to get my hair to stop going gray, and we'll be fine. Private side is on your heart side. Yeah, you could think of it that way. Susan Miller says, you got it, right? David's rejuvenating. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. John Masters says, did it to me. Or John Masters does it to everyone. You got to watch out for John, who's on the call. If you got any kind of issue whatsoever and John knows about it, he will stalk you until he fixes it. He's got some pretty interesting stories. So John has become I remember when John first started with us, and he's become a really, really powerful healer in his own right. So Islam says, I saw it on others, still not on me. That's fine. You probably haven't fully finished unpacking it yet. That's usually at the moment where you vented the emotional charge and had a spontaneous revelation about that issue is when the marking goes. Sometimes they go away instantly. A lot of times they just kind of fade away over the course of a day or two. It's really interesting how rapidly these things can happen. Elgo says, how does the change happen? Which is the technique to help someone improve this? Well, there's several different approaches. And again, when we come back from our break, our offer stuff, I'll be happy to talk about classical approaches to doing this versus the David approaches to doing this, which are a little bit faster and a little bit more direct. But the old school works. How can you use this to build trust? It actually will start to happen automatically, Elgo, because when you soften and you start talking about features and you start relating to people things from their history that you couldn't know and it clicks with them, they fall into deep levels of rapport, as long as you're not an asshole about it. Galaxy J7 says, what about winking? Does the side of wink mean anything? That would be more active profiling, Galaxy, and that's not what we're talking about here. I will talk about it a little bit, but when we come back. But I want to get through the core material right now, and then do our offer and come back and dive deep. Is this fun so far? You guys getting something out of this? Okay, cool. Excellent. See, I'm kind of insecure. I need all the support I can get. Okay. All right. So let's go back. And so we've talked about, again, just to recall, we talked about learning how people think and the order and sequence to connect them with that. Second, we talked about public versus private, the social masks people have, and when we use them. In a business context, by the way, unless you want to actually put somebody on the defensive, you always want to talk to their public side. You always want to talk to the side of them that you want to save their face, for lack of a better word. Okay. Susan Miller is asking, we should regress that insecurity back to cause and fix it. Yes, I should. Yes, I should. But my blazing trust issues get in the way. Sherry Ann says, you're awesome. Thank you for sharing. Well, thank you for being here and being part of Planet David. By the way, did you guys know, just as a quick sidebar, did you guys know that we just launched member levels on our YouTube channel? There's a $9.99 level, there's a $24.99 level, and a diamond level, which is $99.99. And depending on how much private, never before released information and access to me you want, you can sign up and interact with me on a more ongoing basis. Yes, we'll grill you about that later. Okay, so let's move on to module 3. And module 3 is really where the rubber starts to hit the road in terms of emotions. Emotions people conceal and need to, or emotions people need to heal, okay? So let's talk about that. Hold on, let me zoom over to, no pun intended, let me zoom over to the next phase of my questions. So this is how people feel. The emotions they conceal or the emotions they need to heal. So when we start to look at people's faces, and again, just to to alleviate confusion, we're going to do this in terms of a clock face. So 12 o'clock being up here and then moving down to 1 o'clock. So the first thing we want to look at, and by the way, all of these traits, hold on a second, let me make this a little bit smaller. All of these traits are bilateral. In other words, with very few exceptions, will there be a trait that can show up only on the right side. In fact, there's not a single one of these traits that only shows up on the right or left side. When we look at this map, the first thing we want to do is we want to look at which side of the face are the markings deeper or bigger, because that's going to tell us where they've been holding on to toxified emotion, the emotional life they've been leading, and where it's more prevalent. So certain lines on the map we're about to go through are very good. Some of them are neither good or bad. They're just behavioral traits or emotional traits that we've stored. But every single one of those lines on the emotion map that we're going to talk about is something that can be treated and will change when the toxified emotions and the issues connected to those toxified emotions are released, okay? But pragmatically, from an influence and profiling perspective, we look at somebody, we know how they, by the 3 zones, we know how they think, what order they want to consume data. By their public versus private side, we know, we can read what kind of emotions a person is experiencing in their private life versus in their public life. The next phase, which is where we're going now, is to look at each of the emotions, where they mark, and what they mean in a way that you can start to unpack them. But one of the first things you can look at is, like, especially the eyes. Which eye is bigger? If they're noticeably bigger on one side, then it means something. And we have a whole 2-day training just on eyes in our face reading level 1 class. We unpack the eyes like you would not believe. We don't need to go that far today to start using these things. But once again, as we explore the emotional map, remember that how you talk about these traits is, in many cases, as important and sometimes more important than knowing what the traits are. So when you start unpacking people's emotions, and by the way, once you turn this shit off, it's very hard, or turn it on, it's very hard to turn it off. Just knowing that is going to give you some tremendous leverage psychologically and emotionally over people. Everybody doing that getting expensive. I don't know what those questions are about, but okay. So let's go back to the emotional map. So starting at the 1 o'clock position, right up here, when you have a line that runs from about the middle level of the eyebrow, sometimes a little bit more lateral, to the corner of the eyebrow, you're seeing somebody who's spent a lot of time engaging in the process of being skeptical. Okay. When you see a line that's evolving from the outer canthus right here and travels up, you're seeing what we call joy lines. Okay. So again, these are, and by the way, when we start talking, when you come to Killer Influence or CPI and we start talking about influence techniques, especially when it comes to approaching and reading people in the moment, we're going to talk a lot about what we call positive eye contact. Positive eye contact almost always includes these lines. When somebody looks at you and they smile, and you see these wrinkles up here, you see what we've come to term as an authentic smile or a Duchenne smile. Okay. And when you see those 3 components together, you see positive, they're looking at you, they've got a smile, and you got these little joy lines up here. That's what we consider positive eye contact. That's a sign of genuine interest and genuine pleasure in relating to us. If we don't see that, if we see, they're looking at us directly in the eye, they've got this nice little smile. Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. I thought you wanted to look at me. All right, I guess I'll back up and do this again. Is that better? Is that better? Okay, yeah, I apologize for that. I got multiple windows open, and sometimes I forget to switch back and forth. So let me go ahead and revisit this. So let's talk about positive eye contact, because this is something when you make an approach socially, we call it social approaching. You have two forms of eye contact. You have authentic and social. Authentic eye contact always includes a smile, direct eye contact, and joy lines. So once again, when we look at a person giving us positive eye contact, are they looking at us directly? Are they smiling? And do these joy lines appear? I need to point out my wrinkles. Okay, so if you look at somebody and you see the smile and they're looking at you directly, but they're dead from the nose up, we call that a social or an inauthentic smile. This is somebody who's just being polite, okay? And that's usually somebody who's going to have a little bit more resistance to your influence. They're going through the motions. They're not actively going to engage with you as enthusiastically. We all do this when we're at a networking function or something like that. Yeah, a lot of people are looking on YouTube, and I hope Brandon is helping those people out. We got Zoom and YouTube did not get along today. They had some kind of fight, and for whatever reason, they're just not getting along. So this again is this is what happens in the moment. And this is probably a good time to talk about active profiling versus passive profiling. So let me just go ahead and scroll down and kind of give you when we look at active profiling, what we're looking at are microexpressions, body language, nonverbal stuff. But what these always are in the moment. These are changes that happen in a split second as people try to manage, process, or conceal an emotion. They change in a split second, and that's why. And so when you talk about pupil dilate, things like blink rate, pupil dilation, or paralanguage. These are all things that happen in the moment, right? When we look at passive profiling, which is what we're talking about on this webinar, passive profiling allows us to unpack personality, temperament, attitudes, trauma history, health, lifestyle, / constitution. Okay, so if we look at the difference, there's a lot more that goes on here, but these are the big ones. All right, so active profiling happens in the moment. Passive profiling happens over a lifetime. What I mean by that is the things we're unpacking are the consequence of a lifetime of microexpressions and emotional experiences, not the result of any particular one. Does that make sense? Do you understand how they can help each other, but at the same time, they're very different? Yes? Okay. Again, if I leave you guys behind, I mean, in terms of, you know, I'm going pretty fast because I want to keep timely, but if, you know, if this works for you guys, it's fine. Yes, ideally, Elgo, you want to learn both. In fact, I have a training coming up where we're going to be teaching both. But I want you to understand the differences that make a difference. Why going full screen so we'll only reply when, I don't understand that. Susan Miller says, so chronic versus acute. Yeah, Susan, you could say that. Again, to borrow medical terms, chronic versus acute. But again, microexpressions are extraordinarily useful in calibrating behavior in the moment, but they're not as useful in the moment to create a profile, a long-term profile of people's life experiences, how they're going to interact, relate to authority, things of that nature. Okay, this is a dramatically context dependent. This is lifestyle dependent. Okay. Okay, so going back to these, once again, let me erase this. So joy lines, very important. We want joy lines. However, there are other emotional issues that can kind of come into the place. Nigel says, do they appear at different areas over the face? Joy lines only appear here. Joy lines only appear from the outer canthus curling up towards the eyebrow. That's the only place you'll find joy lines. When the lines start from the outer canthus and they begin to journey down, you're dealing with what I call the sadness continuum. And what that means is from sadness down. So the line here is sadness. It's a very short line, can be chronic or it can be acute. And the line becomes longer. You're leading into sorrow, which can be a longer term processing, or as often the case, hidden or repressed trauma. Yeah, many of the lines do hide until stress appears. If they go down through here, this is somebody who's held a lot of grief that they haven't resolved yet. Okay, this may be one extreme loss that they've suffered or encountered, or it could be a bunch of losses that they just have denied or repressed or avoided actually processing out. So when you see these lines, they're almost always, when you see them, they're almost always headed for lung problems of some kind, or they've already got them. So there's a direct correlation between the emotions of grief with lung issues. Now, so let's just recap. You've got skepticism, joy, sadness, sorrow, and grief. If this were a face reading class, this is where we would break up into groups and actually start having people unpack the markings. Two participants have raised a hand, and I don't know what. Whatever your questions are, type them in the chat. Will I be sharing actual photos to demonstrate these? I wasn't planning on it. I would have to actually go through my manuals and find some for you, but there are some. A great book to get, by the way, is Face Reading and Chinese Medicine by Lillian Bridges, my teacher. I typed it in the chat for you guys. But yeah, we could, if we have time, maybe after we do the offer and stuff, we come back. If you guys are patient, I'll go and look for some pictures where we can show this. Or if anybody who's a veteran on the webinar has some of these lines, they want to post them in the chat box, you can just upload the file and people can look at it. Okay. Because I want you to learn, but these are again, what's really important right now is knowing where to look and what they mean. Okay. So we got skepticism, joy, sadness, sorrow, grief, but there's a few other lines that you want to look at. When you have a line that starts from the inner canthus, that's this area right here, and travels down through the lung area, moving towards that grief intersection, this line is called lost love. And let me explain a little bit about what lost love actually means. Lost love, is, what most people think is, okay, I lost somebody that was important to me. That's not necessarily the case. Lost love lines appear and they start at the inner canthus and they work down. Now there's two variances I've seen, or variations I've seen on the lost love line. And they make sense. The first one is the one you see on the emotional map. It starts at the inner canthus and just kind of travels down towards that grief line. Now, lost love line occurs when something that was part of your golden path, something that was such a fundamental part of your sense of who you are and your place in the world, has been lost or taken away from you. So the example I often give people is, let's say that you, when you were young, you loved horseback riding. You loved horses. You loved everything about horses. You fantasized about becoming a professional equestrian or horse rider, you know, something of that nature. And then as time goes on, some kind of weird autofocus is happening here. I'm not sure what's going on there. But let's say like 10, 15 years later, you meet somebody who is not only allergic to horses, they don't like horses, they hate horses, but you're really in love with this person. And because you love this person, you put the horses away. You stop doing those activities. If it was really a part of your, what the Taoists call your golden path, in other words, your mandate from heaven, your reason for coming to this world, to taking on this body, then what will happen is you will develop a line that runs down. And so it's, when you see a lost love line, it doesn't necessarily indicate the loss of a person, although it could be. What it does indicate is the loss of an activity or a person or a relationship that was so foundational to your sense of who you are and what was right and desirable in your world that it marked you very traumatically. It affected your jing, or the material substance of your body. Now, the other line I've seen, and this one, it makes perfect sense, will start at the inner canthus, just like a regular lost love line. But what will happen is it will travel across to the sadness region, and then it'll come down. And I see this a lot with people who have lost significant relationships. Usually not so much activities, but again, it's not 100%. If they've got any kind of lost love line, it means something important to them was lost, something that was foundational to their sense of purpose or identity or being. When it comes across, chances are they're still grieving that loss. Does that make sense? That's kind of how you extrapolate two traits. Does that make sense? I saw that at the last face reading class that I taught. In fact, I actually went up to the lady and I said, I pointed to the line and I said, you need to get that back. And she just broke down right there. And that's one of the things, that's another reason why I'm cautioning you. When there's something that happens to the face reader when they learn this material, there's some kind of, for all woo aside, there's some kind of transformation that happens, some kind of switch gets flipped inside the reader, where the moment you start unpacking a face, even if it's casual, a person will become hyper reactive to that. I've literally walked up to people, looked at something on their ear and said, what happened when you were 5? And they literally had a meltdown right in front of me. We've had lots of witnesses to that. Those of you at the last face reading class, I walked up to a lady, I said, you got to get that back. She had to go sit and just be by herself for 10 minutes before she could talk to anyone. And that's all I said to her, right? So there's this deep level emotional vulnerability that you can tap into as a face reader. And you can use it for good or you can use it for ill, but use it with respect. Because it's that powerful. You have that much psychological and emotional leverage over people. Okay. So hold on a second here. Are we good so far? I see questions. First time. Okay. All right, let's go back to our drama. And again, what's going to happen as soon as I finish the first half, we're going to do our offer and then we'll come back. So these are the big ones. Right? When I look at people, these are one of the first ones I look at. If I'm not reading their hairline and these areas right here, and then right and left side, sorry, I'm going to look at which side of the face are these lines deeper on. If they've got deeper, longer lines in their left side than their right side, I know that in their private life, they're a lot more unhappy, or they have a lot deeper, richer emotional life. If it's the opposite, then I know that they're much more satisfied or much more involved emotionally with their public persona. Okay, so just to recap. When you look at people, another line I want to call your attention to, and you're going to see this one a lot in abuse victims. These are called disempowerment lines. Now, these lines often start as a vertical or diagonal line that's extending from the inner canthus down the bridge of the nose. Oops, I'm sorry, I didn't share my screen, did I? My bad. Well, actually, before I share my screen. So I don't know if you can see it here, but let me kind of just, when the line starts here and it travels down the bridge of the nose, and I see these are diagonal lines, what you're seeing are what I call appeasement or disempowerment lines. Appeasement or disempowerment lines indicate that at some point in that person's past, somebody violated their boundaries. Maybe it was a parent, maybe it was a boyfriend or a wife. It doesn't matter. What it signifies is that at some point in that person's past, their boundaries were violated, and they pushed back. They decided they were going to stand up for themselves. They weren't going to let that happen. And what happened in that moment was when they pushed back, the person pushed back even harder, and the person was so cowed, their spirit was so broken for whatever reason, that they flipped the script and became an appeaser. They started trying to find ways to make things okay again, to put things back to the way they were. And so these people lapse into a type of behavior where they're almost always trying to make up for some perceived wrong. And you'll see this a lot in people who have very abusive spouses, people or who are abused as children, where they had to constantly feel like they had to make up for their right to exist, so to speak. Does that make sense? There's two sets of lines that mark boundary violation for certain, but they have very different issues. So when you see these lines, I'll show you this on the screen now. Okay, so when you see these lines on the screen here, that's almost always an indication of somebody who is in appeasement mode. My teacher, Lillian Bridges, calls them disempowerment lines, but really the behavior that's attributed to that is, I made you mad, I'm gonna find a way to make up for it, please don't hurt me or whatever, right? Does that make sense? Yes, again, if you're a therapist or a coach and you see these lines, tread carefully. But what this almost always indicates, you're going to have to unpack that trauma. You're going to have to find a way to get them, even if they're coming to you for something else. If your brain or your attention is drawn to those lines, it's an organic message from the person's neurology and their energy field, their spirit, for lack of a better word, that this needs to be resolved. So at some point in your sessions, you're going to have to unpack that. It's going to come up some way, somehow. Okay. Now, if you're not doing this for therapy, I hesitate to say this. All right, I'm going to tell you, if you have these lines, chances are you've got weak boundaries. Chances are you've got some weak boundaries. And if people know how to make you feel bad about yourself, they know how to press your personal, they know how to peel away your private masks, your public masks, they can get you to do things. Okay? That's almost always what these markings indicate if you extrapolate from them. Now, what it means is that's a past behavior. Yes, these are lines along the nose, and I see them most often in abuse victims, people who were very much picked on, bullied, were basically appeasers. They had to find a way. Somebody picked on them, they pushed back. The retaliation from the pushback got worse, and they lapsed into, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to yell at you or stand up for myself. Mike is asking, Nigel's saying, is that like controlling you? Yes. Yes. Mike Cerna is asking, or are they discovered in the moment when you're working with them? Both. I've seen it happen both ways. I've seen it happen both ways. Sometimes these lines don't show up until you've actually elicited the emotion in a therapy session. Many times though, many times when the person walks in the door, you'll see it. It'll just jump right out at you. I've seen lines that are so deep in people that it looks like somebody took an X-Acto knife and just etched it into the bone, right? So when you see these lines, understand what could be happening or what it determines in terms of that person's malleability when somebody is pressing on their emotional vulnerabilities. Does that make sense? Is this useful? Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, stupid gaslighting. Well, gaslighting is either stupid or not stupid. It's a tactic, and unfortunately, if it didn't work, predators wouldn't use it. So one of the things that we need to do once we understand how to read our own emotional maps is we can look in the mirror every morning and get a snapshot of our emotional health. We can look right at our face and know, okay, we got a lot of sadness we need to work on getting rid of. We got a lot of boundary issues that we need to resolve. We got a lot of fear that we haven't let go of yet, or we haven't found a way to bolster, right? Lots of different ways that we can use what you're learning. Nigel says, how can I keep you on screen and chat? Well, I don't know. Are you guys having fun with this so far? Botox. Ooh, Lisa, if I got something for you. I got to find the notes, but I'll talk about Botox. There's actually been some studies now that confirm that Botox injections actually stunt emotional expressiveness and emotional affect. They actually inhibit it. Aren't all emotions serving a useful purpose? Yes. The problem is that many times what we choose to do with that emotional expression isn't healthy. Nigel says, I can send you a pic of my face for reading. Well, let's get through the formal portion of our training today. Then we'll circle back and we'll see what we have time for. Is that useful? Yeah. No, Botox, bad. All right. Okay, cool. So let's do a few more traits, then we'll do our offer, and then we'll circle back. It's not going to make me popular with some of the plastic surgeons out there, but hey, that's just how it is. Okay, so let's look once again at our facial map. And let's bring this up. Okay. Sorry, my pages keep moving around. Mike Stone says, so real quick, in the context of public versus private face, how can we better understand how close the emotion line is? We discover isn't the gravity to the person. I don't understand the question, Mike. Rico. So yes, actually I have pictures, and I show these in my face reading classes of people who started learning face reading 20 years ago or 10 years ago, and what they look like today, and they look like they've lost 20 years. Their faces are like completely gone. Most of the wrinkles are gone. It's amazing. Nigel says, it's true this because my face is less wrinkled with my new higher position I've got. Why? It's because emotional wrinkles are a sign of emotional toxicity. Okay, because we're not solid creatures. We're refracted energies that are shown through the lens of the nervous system. Jeanette Foley says, what was the name of the book you mentioned? Face Reading and Chinese Medicine by Lillian Bridges. Okay. All right, so let's look now at some more lines. And these lines are, again, this line right here. It starts from the corner of the alanasi, or the nose, and it moves down. Let me use a different color. And it moves down this way. It can be bilateral, or it can be on one side more than the other. These are called purpose lines. These are good lines to have. What this almost always indicates, when you have a purpose line, it indicates somebody who is on their golden path. Now, the golden path is, if you've ever worked with clients, or you've ever looked in the mirror, or maybe as you're falling asleep at night, you've said to yourself, I know I was meant to do something with this life. I know I was sent here for a purpose. If I could just figure out what it was. Taoist shamans and mystics call that your golden path, your mandate from heaven. And so 2 lines are really, really relevant to understanding your mandate from heaven. The first one we talked about, which is these lost love lines, which almost always indicates the loss of an activity or basically something you're doing or something that was part of your life that was intrinsic to your golden path, to fulfilling your mission in this world. Now, people ask, well, what's so important about a golden path? Well, if you like to get younger, your golden path is the way to do it. If you want to live longer, your golden path is the way to do it. If you want to be happier, more joyful, your golden path is the way to do it. If you want to make a difference in the world, your golden path is the way to do it. So when we lose a piece of ourself that was part of our golden path, we mark here. When we're starting to get on track in our life, publicly or privately, when we're starting to get onto activities and situations and circumstances and environments that are in harmony with that mandate from heaven, that spiritual mission we came to fulfill, you will develop lines here from the corner of the nose down. Now, most women hate these lines because they're lines, right? Does it have to be clear even without smiling? It usually is. Usually the more on your path you are, the more pronounced these lines become, okay? And what's interesting now, if we go back to our map of the face, did I share my screen? I didn't share my screen again, sorry. We go back to our map of the face. Hold on. Uh-oh. I can't get my picture. Hold on a second. We go back to our map of the face and we look at right and left sides. If a person's purpose line is deeper on their private side, it means that their private life is more on track. If it's deeper here, it means they're all more on track in their public life. Now remember, the important thing to remember about Golden Path is that Golden Path is not about a job. It's about a lifestyle where you're engaged and following your joys, following your passions, and making a difference in the world. And this is what leads to what the Taoists considered immortality. And our immortality came in 3 varieties. A, physical immortality. In other words, you live a long, long time, usually long enough to complete your mission, which can be 80, 90, 100, 200 years, whatever. Sometimes if you're following Taoist practices, there's this physical immortality thing that we aspire to. The second level of immortality is through your children, passing your traits and your gifts down through your lineage. The third kind of immortality is the one that most of us are actually secretly craving, in addition to living forever biologically. And that is, you leave something behind that is uniquely yours that goes on after you've passed on. And that's what a lot of what most of us are trying to do in this world is we're seeking different forms of immortality. We're seeking ways to leave a mark on the world for, that goes on after we've shuffled off this mortal coil and onto the next level, life level in the game of life, right? So these are 3 ways, and being on your golden path facilitates all of them. Okay, and so you'll live longer, you'll be happier, you'll tend to be wealthier, and it doesn't really matter when you get on your golden path. In fact, people who get on their golden path later in life tend to actually move faster than people who start early. So again, we actually have a golden path workshop coming up. For those of you who have taken golden path, this might be something that you want to play with. I see questions in the chat. Did I forget to share my screen again? No, we're good. Okay. Hold on. Let me look at the chat and see what people have. Labor says, how do injury, scars, or hard life? Oh, very good question. And put a pin in that one, David, because as soon as, Clayton, if you want to take a Golden Path workshop, reach out to Stephanie at nlppower.com or 858-282-4663, and she can give you all the information on a Golden Path. Stay till the end of the webinar, though, because you'll find a way to do it for a lot, get a lot more for just hanging out. David, on injuries and scars, Please put a pin in that when we come back from our offer sheet and the training packages we've got. We're going to go ahead and we'll talk about that. Okay. Okay. So you guys kind of ready to go to the next level? Would you guys like to, learn how to read people's personalities, temperaments, understand yourself better, gain an unbeatable edge in life, and take your people reading skills to the next level? Type in yes if you're ready, because otherwise I'm just going to skip it. Oh, it's good to know. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. For your entertainment and edification, my good friends, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to announce today's webinar special with 2 W's is the Secrets of Face Reading Home Study Course. This is a $1,497 value. And what this is a 3-day training where we actually cover a lot of the things that we talked about in this webinar, but much more in depth. This particular home study course, remember you guys were asking about how to unpack emotions, how to resolve toxified emotions and get that stuff handled. This is the class where face reading meets hypnotherapy and NLP and the classical approach to Chinese vibrational psychotherapy. Okay, this class is 2 days of intense training in face reading and 1 full day of just fixing your shit, just learning how to point to it, unpack it, attack it, resolve it. You'll literally see your faces change over the course of the 3 days that you're actually working on this. And you'll be equipped to go out into the world, able to unpack people's personalities, read their emotions, read their trauma history, know at what age, different traumas happen. You'll be able to tell how they relate to authority and extrapolate very powerful personality profiles, as well as clear your own stuff, help other people clear their stuff in a very powerful, systematic way. You do not need to know a single thing about Chinese medicine to do this course. I've spent a ridiculous amount of time combing through all the literature, all the lore, and organizing these things so that anybody can walk in and just start unpacking faces. Okay? It's a $1,497 value, and it's available to you today on this webinar. Of course, we're going to give you a bunch of other stuff because we're going to include with this their Secrets of Personal Transformation home study course. And what's involved with this, you're also going to get, if you want to grab the hold of this webinar special today, we're also going to throw in our special Identity by Design hypnotherapy home study course. This is our flagship beginner to expert, hypnotize people anytime, anywhere, for any reason, balls to the wall hypnosis course. This makes every single person that we've run through this Identity by Design course has come out on the other end with an amazing, powerful skill set. They're able to hypnotize people anytime, anywhere, under any circumstances. In fact, in this particular class, I think this is actually the class where we had people in the lobby of a hotel undergoing renovations with an active jackhammer, and they're doing full-on change work right next to an active operating jackhammer, and they're getting complete change in deep trance, right? John can tell you this. There are a bunch of people who've taken this course, because one of the things that's important when you start to unpack people's faces, you're going to want to do something about it. And we want to make sure that you have the tools to change yourself, but also yes, this is actually the best course for self-hypnosis, Frank. It's going to give you 7 specific techniques, as well as the ability to hypnotize people anytime, anywhere, for any reason, with or without a trance induction. So it'll allow you to remove blocks and limiting beliefs. It'll allow you to find and remove negativity you didn't even know you had, to clear up issues that just don't seem to go away. It'll allow you to change that crappy voice inside your head so it builds you up instead of tears you down. It'll teach you to resolve the negativity from your past, so when you actually look back on your past, you only remember in ways that empower you, that make your life better and stronger. And it'll install the traits and qualities and characteristics of people that you want, and much more. Susan says, what if we already have Identity by Design? Not a problem. All you need to do is give Stephanie a call, and as long as the price point is the same, you can substitute any other course that you think is a fit in place of the course you've already gotten. That's something we've always done. If we have Identity by Design, my next would be regression or trauma. Yes. And we do have a real world trauma resolution program that you could substitute for Identity by Design very, very easily. I would recommend, Susan, that if you can, we're doing an 8-day NLP hypnotherapy trauma resolution and regression class in Las Vegas, where I'm going to literally teach you NLP and hypnosis all integrated with the energy psychology that we do. It's going to be an 8-day live event out in Las Vegas. If you really want to get the biggest bang for your buck, seriously consider coming out and spending 8 days with me, going neck deep or more into this stuff. But if not, you can just, and in addition to that, you can just substitute real world trauma resolution or NLP regression for this home study course. So if you were to take the face reading class, which is $1,497, plus the Identity by Design hypnotherapy home study course, total value would be $2,994. But we're also going to throw in something really cool. You got to remember that face reading is an energy-based vibrational psychotherapeutic technique. And many of the people who study face reading have a very deep level interest in energetics, psychic phenomena, psychic healing. And so what we're going to include as a way to kind of synergize all these things together is our vibrational healing energy secrets and remote influence home study course. This course is going to teach you how to unlock the power of your mind to control your energy, build it, and use it for something on a consistent, testable level. You're going to learn how to balance and clean chakras if you believe in those things, influence and heal people remotely, clear up issues that just don't seem to go away, boost your intuitive and psychic abilities in a systematic way, manifest anything you want in the shortest amount of time possible. Some of the most powerful manifestation techniques on the planet are taught in this course. And they're actually derived from the healing arts, but they translate very, very powerfully into the ability to manifest patently impossible stuff a lot of times. It's really crazy. Some of you have actually manifested stuff using these. Go ahead and type that in the chat so people know whereof I speak. You'll learn how to protect yourself against manipulation and psychic attack and tap into your true potential. If you're serious, most people that I meet who come to me for Golden Path work, this is almost always a no-brainer. This is something that they're absolutely looking for, and it makes all the pieces fit into place. This is our foundation course in transitioning from just hypnosis and NLP-based stuff to the energetic and vibrational universe that we're swimming in. Total value for this course is $1,497. It's yours absolutely free. If you looked at the Secrets of Face Reading is a $1,497 value. The Identity by Design brings it up to $2,994. And of course, when you add in that vibrational healing, $1,497, that gives you a total value, if you were to go to the website today and try and purchase it, of $4,491. But you know what? We're not going to stop there. And here's one of the reasons why we do this. Because when people come to me and they ask me, David, should I get your videos or should I come to the live event? Without hesitation, I always tell people, come to the live events, because it's the live events that make you awesome. It's the live events that allow me to imprint these things deeply into your neurology and force you to come out with them over and over again until they're a natural part of who you are, so you can do them anytime, anywhere. And then you go back to your videos and you use your videos to supplement the live events that you've attended. Now, I get that some people, because of COVID especially, but sometimes because of other logistical reasons, can't get off work, you got someone you got to take care of, you got kids, whatever, you can't get to the live event. And when those situations arise, this is where these packages that we put together come in handy, because I sit down and I think about, okay, if a person can't come to a live event, how can I make sure that they come away from this program with exactly what they need? And so I put these things together in a very synergistic way so that everything complements and overlaps in a way that you can start to really get the benefit of these techniques for yourself, okay? So we're gonna include face reading, vibrational influence, of course, Identity by Design. We're also gonna include People Reading for Fun and Profit, Body Language Secrets Home Study Course. This is where you can begin to unpack everything else we talked about. You remember we talked earlier about the difference between active profiling and passive profiling. This is where you can begin to unpack the active side of things. Microexpressions, gesture, body orientation, nods, leans, foot placement, lie detection. All of these things come out in this particular active profiling course. This is a crash course that we did. And we're actually going to be building more of these classes as time goes on, because this is something that amplifies and feeds into that I3 model we talked about, that allows you to rapidly know what buttons to press in the order and sequence to press them, to be able to speed read people in the moment, as well as develop a long-term profile of them. So this allows you to understand the body language of attraction, the body language of lie detection and deceptive behaviors, how to influence people without words, which is powerful. how to project charm and confidence and charisma on command, how to understand men better, how to understand women better. What's the differences on how they process and how they emote, how they express, how to dress for success, and much more. You'll not only learn how to do all that, you'll learn how to eliminate the behaviors that actually weaken your influence, that weaken your sense of presence and the authority that you exude, this the presence you exude in front of other people. You'll be able to close more deals, get more dates, become a relationship magnet, and be able to utilize and leverage those skills anytime, anywhere, under any circumstances, because that's what we train our people for. It's not enough if you can just do this in a courtroom or a therapy room. You got to be able to do it everywhere. But I also realize that a lot of you have a very specific area that you want to apply this material in. And so we contextualize all of this. And I want you to really think about where you want to apply these things, how you want to apply them, and what's important to you about that. So as you connect that to this package, you can realize that we're giving you exactly the tools that I believe you're going to need to get the biggest bang for your buck and make your life exactly what you want it to be. Total value price, it's a $997 value. We're going to throw this in absolutely free. The total value is $5,488 if you went to the website and tried to purchase it. But we're not done. We're also going to throw in the Lie to Me If You Dare, How to Catch a Liar crash course. This was a live event that I taught, where I taught the 15 most powerful tells that I learned from a CIA spy for how to unpack people who are lying or deceptive. It's going to cover baselines, it's going to cover clusters, it's going to cover my particular approach to creating a rapport continuum so you can understand deviation from those baselines. You're going to learn 15 unique tells that clue you in when people may be lying, how to look at everything the body is doing and understand it better, how to understand men better, once again, because we express ourselves differently, how to understand women better, because women tend to express themselves differently, especially when they're under stress. How to eliminate the behaviors, once again, that weaken your influence. What are the things that people do when they're under stress that signal that you may not be congruent or you may be lying? What's the difference that makes a difference? How do you tell which is which? We're going to show you how to do that. You're going to learn to close more deals, get more dates, and ultimately, you'll never be manipulated again, or you'll at the very least, you'll dramatically reduce the frequency with which other people can pull one over on you. So if you take everything, I would like to pick my brain on Donald Trump. Well, okay, maybe not right now, but maybe at a later time. Total value, once again, $5,585. This course we're going to throw in absolutely free, just for grabbing the Secrets of Face Reading Home Study course, valued at $1,497. You're going to get over $5,585 of free stuff. But again, as like before, we're not done. But let's review what we've got so far. So we've got the Secrets of Face Reading Home Study course, valued at $1,497. We've got the Identity by Design Hypnotherapy Home Study Super Course. We're going to value at $1,497. We're going to give you that absolutely free. We're going to throw in the Vibrational Healing, Energy Healing, and Remote Influence course, valued at $1,497. We're going to give that to you absolutely free. We're also going to throw in the People Reading for Fun and Profit 2-day intensive, which gives you the active profiling techniques, as well as lie detection and stuff, valued at $997. We're going to give that to you absolutely free. And then finally, we're going to throw in the Lie to Me If You Dare, How to Catch Liars crash course. Okay, that's a lot of stuff, right? Total value, $5,585. Okay. However, for those of you who take charge today, who really decide you want to move forward on this, for the next 35 people to register, we're going to give you something extra special. One of the things I always talk about with people is the importance of live one-on-one interaction, of getting in front of me in any way you can and just drilling on these skills until you can do them in your sleep. So for the first 35 people to register today, we're going to give you a special. We're going to give you a Face Reading for Fun and Profit virtual live 3-day training. It's going to be November 6th, 7th, and 8th, 2020. It will be done remotely. I'll be teaching this from my home direct to your home. You'll be able to log in, do breakouts, cover all the cool stuff we talked about today and a whole lot more. And I'm also, because this is a virtual boot camp and I have the freedom to have access to all of my materials. We're also going to spend some time talking about active profiling, where we look at blink rates, pupil dilation, the 15 body language tells that I mentioned in the Lie to Me If You Dare program, and a whole lot more. We're not only going to unpack the level 1 face reading material that I teach all of my students, we're also going to do some modules on how to actively profile people behaviorally in the moment, so you can become aware of microexpressions, you become aware of blink rate, you can be aware of general hemispheric preference, you can become aware of all the things that people do in the moment that signal whether they're being true or not true, whether they're nervous, whether they're attracted, and you'll be able to leverage all of that into your face reading, in addition to learning how to just look at people's trauma histories, look at if people are more responsive to authority, more rebellious, whether their trauma histories, and all the other stuff. All the things we've talked about. And not only are we going to give you that virtual live event, so I don't care where you're at, anywhere in the world, you're going to log in, you're going to have breakouts, you're going to have a lot of examples. It's amazing. But not only that, it's a $1,950 value. We're also going to give you the video of your training to keep. You're going to have a private Facebook group. We're going to upload those videos, and you'll be able to access the videos of your virtual bootcamp anytime you want, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Okay? If you were to, everything, the course plus the value of the video itself, you're looking at over $3,447 in value. We're going to give you this entire face reading training and video package absolutely free, just for being one of the first 35 people to register for this program today. So once again, if we look at things, you'll be able to read people's personality instantly. You'll understand how they think and feel and behave. You'll be able to measure their sexual and romantic compatibility. You'll understand their current state of physical and emotional health, how to uncover and resolve forgotten traumas, their relationships with their parents and siblings, know how they make decisions, and much, much more. Okay? And in addition to everything else I've already talked about. Is that cool? Yes or yes? Okay, so let's review. Awesome. Total value, if you were to go to the website and try and purchase this today, which by the way you can't, is $9,032.00. But of course, we're probably not going to charge you that. You might have guessed, right? So let's just review real quick. Secrets of Face Reading Home Study Course valued at $1,497. And we're going to Identity by Design Hypnotherapy Home Study Course valued at $1,497. We're going to give you that absolutely free. Vibrational Healing, Energy Healing and Remote Influence valued at $1,497. Once again, we're going to throw it in free. People Reading for Fun and Profit 2-day intensive. Again, more techniques on active profiling and nonverbal influence, $997 value. We're going to give that to you absolutely free. The Lie to Me If You Dare, How to Catch Liars crash course, valued at $97. We're going to throw that in absolutely free. And you're going to get that 3-day Face Reading for Fun and Profit virtual certification bootcamp super ticket, which includes the VIP video of the course. Total value, $3,447 value. Yours absolutely free. Total value of this package, if you were to grab it full retail today, is $9,032. But let's see what I did here. I think I got my numbers wrong. It's actually, yeah. Anyway, so again, so as you can see, $9,032 or $9,485, whichever one you want. But we're not going to charge you that. We're not going to charge you now over $9,000. We're not going to charge you $4,167. We're not even going to charge you $2,697. Yours today, the entire package: Face Reading Secrets Home Study Course, Identity by Design, Vibrational Healing and Energy, for People Reading for Fun and Profit, Lie to Me If You Dare, 3-day Face Reading Super Ticket, one low installment of just $997, or if you prefer, you can do it all in 3 easy installments of just $399. So if you know you want this, you know you want to participate, be one of the first 35 to grab this amazing home study package. You'll get that 3-day Face Reading Home Study Course and the video of the course, okay? And You can do it in one low installment of $997, or you can do 3 payments of just $399. And again, you get to keep everything. You can start actually downloading those courses and start watching them today. And November 6th through the 8th, I'll be coming direct to you, teaching you 3 days of the most interesting and fascinating synergies of face reading and profiling tactics I've ever come across. Okay. Yes, this is US dollars, Chris. Right. And if you need a payment plan, reach out to Stephanie at nlppower.com. Her number is, hold on a second. So you can reach out directly to Stephanie at nlppower.com or 858-282-4663. The question was asked, what is the best course for healing trauma? Best course for healing trauma is actually probably going to be starting with Identity by Design and then vibration or regression, real world trauma resolution. Okay. Now, the question was asked earlier. Well, David, I've been in Planet David for a while. I already have Identity by Design, or I've bought vibrational healing. If for any reason there is a course in this package that you already have, all you have to do is give Stephanie a call at 858-282-4663. She will go through that program with you, and she will help you select a substitute product or course that you can swap out in your package. Okay, so you actually have the ability to customize courses. We're very flexible that way. And all we really care about in terms of customizing your packages is that the price points match. As long as the price points match, you can swap any of these video courses out for something else. But this, in terms of when I look at based on the live events I've done, based on my experience as a trainer and teacher, this is the optimal sequence of courses and combination of courses that I would recommend for people who really, really want to tap into their potential and utilize the skills of face reading to help other people, including themselves. If your interest in face reading lies more along the relational or relationship, sexuality, dating, seduction oriented phase, there's a couple of suggestions and alternate packages that we could suggest to you that work very, very well. And Stephanie has those write-ups as well. If you're more interested in professional and business applications, then we have one that is more influence oriented. So we have we have this primary package, and then we have 2 alternate packages that are available depending on where your emphasis lies. Because one of the things that we see over and over and over again, let me just jump back to looking you in the eyes real quick. Oh man, I can't find my, there we go. One of the things that I see over and over again is that people fall into one of 3 categories. They either fall into the I want to know myself and empower myself better category. They want, which is also the shit clearing category. They want to be more successful in their romantic dating and attraction seduction applications, or they're more professional oriented in that they want to use these techniques for sales, marketing, jury selection, professional applications, networking, mediation, negotiation. So we developed 3 complementary packages. And if the one we've got here isn't quite a fit, Stephanie knows exactly what courses to recommend based on where you want to be employing this material, okay? And all you need to do, and we can set up a payment plan for you. It's 1 installment of $997 or 3 easy payments of just $399. And you can reach out to her either directly at Stephanie, not Stephanie, at nlppower.com or at 858-282-4663, and she can work that out with you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and jump back to my PowerPoint really quick, and I'll take a few moments to answer questions that you might be having. Okay, while you guys are doing that, and then we're going to take a 5-minute break while you guys can all get your bladders. Then we're going to come back and we're going to pick up with class where we left off, and just go ahead and continue to teach, and then we'll drill down on the specific questions that you have. Is that okay? Is that fair? Which boot? No, no. The boot camp has nothing to do with YouTube. okay? The boot camp is specifically through Zoom, and we're gonna go ahead and, again, people who've just finished face reading level 1 will tell you it's an intense class, and there's a lot of cool stuff that we cover. So I really would like to invite you guys to come out, virtually speaking, and participate, right? How do we get the boot camp then? You click the link and you pay you pay for the package, and you'll get a link. Platinum members will have to work out, because you already have access to a lot of our video content already. So platinum members will have to customize something for you a little bit. Virtually, I can still feel old, sick cat. Don't know what that means. Okay. All right, so go ahead and ask any questions that you have. I'm gonna go ahead and run to the restroom real quick, and then we'll come back and we'll start teaching. So give me 5 minutes. Stephanie and Brandon can take the questions until I get back. Okay, I'm back from my abbreviated potty break. Hopefully you guys are taking some notes and you got some cool questions for me. Remember, we're at that phase now where the better the question, the better the seminar, right? So while I'm going to continue through the emotional map, I don't mind taking sidebars here and there, at least till the kids come home and start making a lot of noise. David Orman asks, have you ever needled into these lines? No, I've never done that. But if you are trained in acupuncture, if you needle these wrinkles, you may cause them to clear it. So just to review really quick. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to actually go about treating these lines. My preferred one is actually just unpacking it verbally, linguistically. Real quick, just to review, this webinar special, by the way, is only good until I sign off the webinar. So like the 3-day face reading, that's something, we're just throwing that in there. It's for the next 35 people and only the next 35 people. And it's only available until the end of the webinar. So if you're on this webinar, or if we automate this webinar later, and you want to take advantage of the super package for $9.97, you may be able to get that. We don't know how long we'll keep that up, but only the people who registered today are going to get that free 3-day face reading virtual ticket and the video themselves. So that's a special just for you guys today. If you need to get a payment plan, Stephanie can work with you. I'm happy to do that. We just want you to get this information and start applying it right away so you can make your life exactly what you want it to be. So Nigel says, so are these creams that ladies buy for face reading, or sorry, these creams that ladies buy for face wrinkles useless? No, I don't think they're useless, but I do think that they may have effects that we haven't anticipated. If it's anything like Botox, the other thing about face reading is that, or in terms of face reading, one of the things we notice is that a facelift lasts about 7 years. After about 7 years, you go back to the face you had before the facelift. So I wish I could find that. I just pulled that information out of the information on Botox out of Lillian's book the other day. I should find it. Anyway, so for those of you who are hardcore therapists, and what we'll do, by the way, if for some reason you don't want to do the virtual boot camp, but you want to come to the face reading class or the Golden Path class we're having in January, you can swap that VIP ticket out for the Golden Path training, which you don't need any face reading training to do. It's just a class that helps you kind of clear blocks to your success, getting back on your golden path, and figuring out what you need to, what life direction you should be taking based on face reading and other applications. So we'll let you do that as well. Swan, oh, kitties, and okay, yes, okay. There's David. Do you ever needle, or do you always do color stuff or verbal unpacking? I can needle, but we tend to unpack it faster, more directly, believe it or not, through the verbal unpacking. And here's what I mean: when you put a needle in a wrinkle, let me jump out of. When you put a needle in a wrinkle, you're inserting a needle into an energy channel. Okay, so think of it like an ocean with many different islands. And so if you have the intention to heal a specific issue and you needle the wrinkle, you're far more likely to invoke it. But many people who do needling aren't trained in the psychotherapeutic understandings of it, what we call initial sensitizing event, subsequent sensitizing events. So when they go and they needle a wrinkle, they're just stimulating the energetic river that it's flowing through. And so it's more generalized, right? Which isn't bad. It's just not as targeted. There will be a resolution process that starts to trigger. But if you don't understand the 3 body issues, where you have the mental body, the energy body, and the physical body, acupuncture as a rule targets the energy body and by default the physical body. It doesn't always go directly to the mental body or the causal body. And the only interventions I have found in my 30 plus years doing this that target the mental body directly are hypnosis, NLP, and holographic memory resolution. Even EFT, which is all about tapping and stuff like that, doesn't target things nearly as powerfully or as directly. When you're doing organic face reading, which is the intuitive Chinese vibrational therapeutic application of these skills, there's an intuitive process that guides you to a specific marking and triggers an abreactive cathartic releasing process. And as you guide them through that, as they resolve the emotional charge, they have a spontaneous revelation or reframe of that event, the markings go away. So the short answer is, yeah, you can needle it and it'll work. I just don't know if it works as quickly. Does that make sense or answer your question? Okay, cool. All right, so you guys ready to go back to our map? Okay, EL says, I would like to buy the package. Oh, wait, that went by really fast. Package still at 990. Would it be possible to get the killer influence within the package still at 997? Reach out to Stephanie and she'll take a look at the price points. And off the top of my head, I don't see a problem with it. Let's see, there's a small chance I can get the three-day face reading considering my schedule. Most likely I will only watch it on the after. That's fine. Again, however you want to use that ticket is up to you. But yeah, reach out to Stephanie, and if the price points are close enough and we can substitute something for you, I'm happy to do that. So Stephanie will be the final arbiter in that, but as far as I'm concerned, as long as price points match up and everything else, it's fine. In fact, we actually have a variation of this face reading package that does include killer influence. So she might just go ahead and show you that what that package looks like, and you may like that one better. So the short answer is yes, reach out to Stephanie, she'll take care of you, okay? Okay. Any other questions about that? Cool cups. Oh, cool. Yeah, it looks like a dragon. That's why I bought it. John Masters, isn't the ISC not considered necessary anymore because you can address all at any point? Just have to hit a taproot or a root symptom. Don't understand the question, John, and where you're basing that from. So Paul says, yes, please. Brandon, I'll pay on, yes, there's a package with killer influence in it. Stephanie Skeet says you can swap it, but it can't be added to the offer. Okay. Elle says, great, thanks. Then I'll buy the package and talk to Stephen. Thank you for considering. I take the package, Ralph says. Very good. Excellent. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your enthusiasm. Yeah, this I got this at Starbucks. Unfortunately, it's ceramic rather than metal, so I have to be very careful with it. Lisa Callahan says, I stuff stuff under my lower lip. Okay, let's talk about stuff under your lower lip, because that's where we're going next. You guys ready? Yes or yes? Is it puffy, Lisa? Yeah, we'll talk about it. Let me get back to my picture. Hold on a second. Okay, so let's go ahead and erase some of this stuff. So we talked about purpose lines. We talked about skepticism, sorrow, grief, sadness, disempowerment. And purpose. Chet, we have to reverse everything. What do you mean reverse everything? Your right side is always going to be your right side, unless you're doing it from a camera where the right and left are deliberately transposed. You might have an issue there. But yeah, well, actually, if you look in the mirror, raise your right hand and you'll know where your public side is. Raise your left hand and you'll know where your private side is. So you can look in the mirror and just know that. That's the simplest mnemonic I can come up with for getting that, because if you take a pic, or when you take a picture of yourself, put your right hand up next to your face or put your left hand up next to your face so you know which is which. These are just ways to get around that really, really simply. Okay, so David, I mix up my right and my left. Well, you're shit out of luck, Allegra. I don't know how to help you with that one. But if you could ask somebody and then have them draw on your face a little dot, and you'll know the dot is always right. That's what we do. That's actually what we do with our X-ray machine in our clinic. When we take X-rays, we take a little paper clip and we tape it on one particular side so we know which is right and which is left, because sometimes the X-ray actually flips it. So little things like that, right? Okay, all right, so let's go back. Let's look at some other lines. And the next three I want to talk about are right in this area here. So the first line I'd like us to talk about is a good line. If you see a line right down the center of the lower lip, this indicates a sense of humor. This person appreciates jokes. They can often take a joke. They can often tell a good joke. So when you see one thick line through the lip like that, it indicates that somebody has a good sense of humor. The next three I want to talk about, I call these the terrible trio. They can show up individually, but often they tend to show up together. So I'd like to talk about these if I could. These lines are overnurturing, bitterness, and disappointment. These things can show up on their own, but many times they show up together, and I'll explain what this is. Let's start with overnurturing. If you have somebody with little short lines right above the lips, can you guys all see that? Please let me know you can see it. Okay, good. When you see these lines, this is somebody who, for whatever reason, either by choice or through a sense of responsibility or being guilted into it, or oftentimes as a result of their job, is engaged in the process of over-nurturing people. There's sometimes this can be a suffocating kind of an energy, but a lot of times it's a result of somebody who is spending way too much time taking care of other people. You're over-nurturing them. You're giving too much of yourself to other people. I see this one a lot. Now, interestingly, what happens with these people a lot of times is that as time goes on, these people tend to operate from an expectation. They have an expectation that the people they're giving to are going to give back to the same degree that they're getting, and they don't. For whatever reason, the person does not get back what they were expecting, and that causes them to feel a lot of disappointment. Disappointment is almost always seen by a wrinkle that starts at the outer corner of the mouth and travels down. Okay, outer corner of the mouth and travels down. This should not be confused, by the way, with what is known in face reading as a downturned mouth. Okay, they are two very different traits. Okay, what we're talking about here is an emotion. Okay, not a quality. Okay, so when you see these wrinkles that trend down from the corner of the mouth, you're seeing somebody who's experiencing a lot of disappointment, who has experienced a lot of disappointment in their life. They had an expectation of something and it was never fulfilled. People made a promise, they didn't hold on it. But you see these very often, you'll see these as a byproduct of expectations that were never met. That all happens a lot when people are over-nurturing, because they're giving and they're giving and they're giving, and they're expecting that the people they're giving to will give back to the same degree, and they never do. They never give back to the same degree that the person is giving, and they become very disappointed. After enough of that disappointment has accumulated, these people will start to become very bitter. They will start to feel like disillusioned, resentful. They'll have a lot of axes to grind, so to speak, that will become very toxic over time. Now, these three I talk about a lot together, because when these three get together, you can have a recipe for cancer. No such thing as an emotionally healthy cancer patient. Now, this does not mean, by the way, and it's important, this does not mean if you have these three markings that you're going to get cancer. What it does indicate is that you've spent a lot of time in a situation that is not good for you. You've developed a huge reservoir of bitterness and disappointment. And at some point, this may reach a critical mass with no end in sight, which leads to hopelessness. And as a product and as a byproduct or a consequence of that sense of hopelessness, of having no way out, they manifest death. They manifest a way out. When you start to unpack cancer, many times you're going to see anger, bitterness, resentment, disappointment, and usually an expectation of getting something back to the degree that things are being given, and it's just not happening. So this is what happens many times: is people manifest a way out. They manifest the cancer as a way to just leave that situation. Gratitude's important. Gratitude's a very powerful, very healing energy. In fact, one of the things we'll talk about at the virtual campus, we'll talk about the 5 transcendent emotions, which are emotions you use, the 5 emotions you use to heal other toxic emotions. Very powerful stuff. We'll also talk about it in the Golden Path workshop in January that we're doing. And we'll probably start integrating it into some of our advanced vibrational healing classes as well. So these are 3 that they can, let me just be very clear and very clear. These 3 can occur independently. They're 3 individual traits. They often appear together, often as a consequence of a lifestyle. They can, if given enough time and enough emotional, compressed, toxified emotion, lead to manifestation of an illness. And the illness is never the problem. The illness is always a means or a message. And when you unpack the reasons behind those messages, a lot of times those messages, i.e. the disease symptoms and processes, go away. And face reading by itself is a very powerful way to begin to initiate that healing, purging, and cleansing process. And a lot of it is by just getting people to dialogue with you and allow them to process out those negative emotions. In addition to being able to profile them and know how they're likely to respond, it's really a very powerful therapeutic and very, very fulfilling process. Classical approach is not fast, but you can do a lot of really amazing things in an hour and 90 minutes, right? It's not as fast as us, point to where you feel it, take it out, spin it, put it back in, boom. We can do that too, right? As long as we know what questions to ask, how to read the body effectively, we can unpack a lot of this stuff, and we can unpack it on ourselves too, which is great because a lot of times we don't know where to start. So we can just get up in the morning after we've hydrated, look at ourselves in the face, let our face orient on an attribute or a facial marking, and start to unpack it. Right? These are things we can do for ourselves and ultimately for the people we love and the people we care about. You can do it therapeutically. You can do it as an influence professional. How do you read a man that has a beard? Very well, right? You can read all kinds of things on my face. Spin or magic frame? Yes, either one is fine. But actually, as far as face reading applications go, as powerful as spinning is, more often than not, what needs to happen for people to resolve a marking is they need to extract a lesson from it. And so magic frame very often gives you a very powerful intervention for an emotional marking or a trauma marking. Magic frame is where you point to where you feel it, reach out, touch the picture, draw a frame around it, write the lessons the experience had to teach you, shrink it down, move it behind you. Yeah, the 3 musketeers, as I call them, spinning, magic frame, and color breathing are going to be your biggest go-tos in a lot of your off-the-cuff face reading. If you're engaged in a therapeutic relationship with somebody, Ligger says I wear that beard well, and I thought I just liked beards. Well, thank you for that again. Your flattery will get you pretty much nowhere. I'm kind of immune to you now. No fun intended. Damn. Okay. And so, but in a full-on therapeutic relationship where you're doing regression, you're doing identity by design, gray room, not gray room, not just gray room, universal solve, and all the things we teach in identity by design, these things can really, really help you. What is the difference between NLP, hypnotherapy versus regression? Well, NLP and hypnotherapy both have regression modalities in them. So in terms of NLP and hypnotherapy versus regression, well, here, let me show you. This is probably the easiest way to show you the difference. Hold on a second. Let me pull up the picture. I got so many windows open right now. don't see what I'm looking for. Hold on a second. Shrink this down. Shrink this down. Oh, that won't let me do it. Here it is. This is probably the easiest way to let people understand the difference between NLP, hypnosis, and regression. So what you have here, and this relates directly to face reading, by the way. Where's my, here it is, share screen. Okay, what you're seeing here is what we call in the world, according to David, a holographic memory container. The red line indicates the container itself, the substance upon which the codes are imprinted. Think of it like a DVD that has a soundtrack and a video track and all these other different tracks on it. But if you were to break apart the code, you would see that there are 5 primary channels. Oops. 5 primary channels: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory. And within those tracks are further distinctions, smaller subtracks. These all come together to create the movie that we watch. Are you guys with me so far on this? For every repressed emotion that you have at least one of these circulated throughout the system, usually more than one, but they're built the same way. So when we look at NLP versus hypnosis, they both engage in altered state work. NLP, let me see if I can pull this up. NLP targets the structure. In other words, it's going to target each of these big tracks here, and these big tracks and these little tracks. This is the programming language that the memory is written in. Okay? NLP will deal with, will recode an issue. But as a rule, it will not directly affect the content. So when we look at NLP, oops, my bad. Hold on, what happened? All right, not review, view, sorry. So when we look at NLP, NLP is going to target this aspect of an issue. When we look at hypnosis, which is also just as important, hypnosis is going to help us target here, this area right in here. It's going to help us to target and change the story of what's happening. It's not necessarily going to change the soundtrack directly. It's not going to change the color or black and white of an issue directly. It's going to change the story of what's happening. Okay? Holographic memory resolution, which is where everything comes together, directly impacts the substance, the DVD that these things are written on. So all of it involves some sort of structural intervention or some form of regressive technique. In the 8-day class we've got coming up next month, you'll learn how to do it all. You'll be certified as a practitioner in NLP-based hypnotherapy, which includes everything we teach in the NLP prac training, in addition to regression therapy. Right? Alexithymia is something that we deal with very, very effectively using these processes. Okay? So does that answer your question? Okay. So yeah, if you want the whole ball of wax and you have a foundation to work from, we have an 8-day live event that we're doing in Las Vegas. If you're interested in that, Stephanie can give you all the details. It's going to be intense, but it will give you a skill set that pretty much makes you awesome. I would like to say world class. Do I have a link? Yes, I do. nlppower.com/events/ hold on a second, 2020 NLP Hypno LV. That should be the link for the regression class next month. We also, and right under that, Brandon has posted a link for the face reading bundle. So, and if you need a payment plan for the NLP class in Vegas, Stephanie can help you with that as well. So anyway, so that's kind of my little squirrel chasing down the idea of NLP versus hypnosis. I hope it's given you a little bit of an understanding about where we're coming from with, and all of this relates directly to face reading. Because when you do magic frame, you're dealing with the VAKOG, you're dealing with the DVD that the entire thing is printed on, and we never touch the content directly. When you're dealing with regression therapy, more often than not, we jump right to the content. Oops, sorry. And we don't necessarily touch the structure. But when you integrate everything, the entire spectrum of what you're seeing here changes spontaneously. It changes everything automatically. Either one by itself can be powerful. When you put them together in the right way, like you see here, you get a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts, and it tends to be faster, more permanent change work. So Becca's dad is asking, are there corollary lines in people who are over-nurtured by people who over-nurture? I would extrapolate that there are, Becca's dad, but I don't know what they might be. I think they would be more like resentment. Actually, no. Actually, I know exactly where they would be. Let me jump back and I'll show you where I think they would show up, okay? Hold on a second. So again, this was never officially taught to me, but based on your question, this is where I would look for this. A, here, here. And let me explain why. First of all, disempowerment line is always about what? It's about boundary violations, right? Another place you would look for it is here, especially if it's a female, okay? When you look at people's hairlines, if you see you know what, let me just show you. If you guys if it's okay if I take a couple minutes to pull up a manual, would that be all right? It needs to be unanimous. All right, give me a minute to pull up the manual. That's not coming up. That's not what I want. Here we go. Okay. By the way, the manual I'm about to show you, you'll also get a copy of when you buy our package. So you'll have a manual go with all the videos. Okay. So you guys can see the manual okay, right? So when we start looking at the effects of overnurturing, and overnurturing can take many forms. So this is where you're gonna, if you're a female, this is where you're gonna see overnurturing. It's gonna be in the hairline and the forehead. So what you're seeing here, this is called mother's influence. And you see this in people, most often female. You see this in people who had a mother who was very forceful in their parenting. And what I mean by that is that this mother went out of her way to make sure that her daughter was raised right, that her daughter learned what salad fork to use, what fork to use at dessert, how to say please, how to say thank you, how to comport herself as a lady in society. Now, when you start to look at the possible ramifications of overnurturing, when you look at this hairline, which is a very smooth, rounded hairline with little tiny hairs, you start to measure, let me use a different color, you start to measure the distance from the hairline to here. But this is only in people with a rounded hairline. The closer these two are together, the more repressive the mother. Okay. I remember one time, in fact, if you get, I think it's included in the video course of the package we're offering. You'll see me walk up to a lady who had a hairline very much like this. I looked at her, I said, your mom was really, really tough on you, wasn't she? She looked at me and said, oh, that bitch, right? Just boom, just instant emotion. So when we look at the distance between this rounded hairline and the eyebrows, the closer this line is, the more repressive. The more distance, the more mom was conscientious, but gave this person the freedom to kind of explore and be herself. Okay, so that's one place where you might see this. Is that helpful? Type it in chat. It's okay. Okay. Paul's been through this so many times. Everybody else is going, what? Okay, we're coming up on, all right, let's get back to our emotional map. So going back to this. Okay, so mother's influence is one place we might see overnurturing. Another place we might see it is here. And then of course here. Let me give a different color for that. So these three areas, we might see the evidence of somebody who's overnurturing. Okay, so let's go back to our emotional map. And as you can see, there's a whole lot more. How would you distinguish these lines from regular age lines? I wouldn't. If they're there, they have the same meaning. Aging is a result of emotional toxicity. So the more emotional toxicity that you have, the more of these lines you're going to show. Okay, that's why we talk about what people conceal and what they need to heal. When you see a person with a lot of lines like this, they have a lot of built up emotional toxicity. If they don't have a lot of lines, they don't hold on to their stuff, or they've been working on resolving it, or they're completely dissociated from their feelings and their emotions. That's generally the three possibilities that you're going to encounter. Okay, so looking at auditory intuition. Auditory intuition manifests as little lines in front of the ear. These lines manifest chin shape, meanings just down and dirty. There's too much there to just say down and dirty. You see fear a lot of time manifesting in the chin, but it doesn't look like lines. More often than not, when you see fear manifesting in the chin, which is a kidney or water area, what you see actually are little dots, like little dimples. If you've ever seen, and if they're there without the person actually making a face or distorting their face, it's more chronic. Someone who has a more pointed chin is going to be a little bit more bossy or a little bit more willful. Someone who has a rounded chin, depending on the size of it, could be a little bit more easygoing, could be a little bit more generous, but have strong will as well. Yeah, they're like small dimples. Yeah. Okay. This particular trait up here, auditory intuition, is almost always a sign of somebody who grew up in a hostile environment. And when I mean a potentially hostile environment, this kind of develops as a form of auditory hypervigilance, in which the person themselves has to constantly pay attention to what they're saying, to how they're talking to people, to what's being said, to people's tones of voices, because they're afraid to say the wrong thing. And if they say the wrong thing, the punishment could be severe. So these lines almost always manifest as a form of auditory hypervigilance. These people over time develop the ability to kind of hear beneath the surface of what people are saying and can infer things very, very quickly. They have really good bullshit detectors. They often make good litigators, mediators, negotiators, therapists, things of that nature. Okay. The other thing you want to watch out for when you're working with auditory intuition is sometimes these people tend to suffer from dehydration, anxiety, and or not necessarily anxiety, but like palpitations due to electrolyte imbalance. So this is when, if you've got these lines, you want to really kind of pay attention to that and make sure that you stay well hydrated. Okay. Another line that we're going to look at is lines on the ear. Lines on the ear indicate blood pressure irregularity. So people with these, and I have them, by the way. You can't see them here, but I have these little lines too. People with these lines tend to have erratic blood pressure spikes. In other words, sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low, and they always have their neurology tends to be hyper responsive to stimuli. So if I'm walking down the hall and somebody jumps out at me or comes out of a door suddenly, and the normal startle response would be around a 4 or 5, yours might be a 7 or 8. It's just and they tend to hold on to it a little longer, take a little bit longer to kind of decompress. So if you've got these lines, it's a good idea to monitor your cardiovascular health. It doesn't necessarily mean you've got a heart issue or a cardiovascular issue yet, but it can indicate, if you've got these little vertical lines, the tendency or the predisposition towards it. So it's a good idea to monitor that and make sure that you watch your diet and things like that. Susan Miller is asking, transpoint and regress to cause. Do people see other changes after face reading? Like, yes, sometimes, very much so. Islam asks, I asked earlier, I have noticed after negativity cleanse, the skin in the private side of my face becomes worse. I've never had that much. It's usually an emotional detox. Thank you for asking that question again. Usually when you have some kind of spontaneous eruption as a result of an emotional work, it's a form of detox. It's not uncommon for people who do emotional shit clearing in a session to get up and run to the bathroom after the session because their colon starts to dump. Lisa Count had a puffiness is where the bitterness lines are. Yes, this area around the lips is related to intestines and the stomach and intestines. So if you've got a lot of puffiness here, you may have some water retention issues. It could be stagnation as well. But a lot of Crohn's and IBS type issues tend to have a puffiness in and around these areas. So gut health, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Okay. In fact, I'll just show you really quick. We cover all this in the certification classes. In the virtual class, we'll cover this, but let me show you this just as an aside. One second. Or maybe not. Okay, there was a picture I was going to show you, but it's not letting me pull it up. So here it is. Okay, so when an acupuncturist looks at your face, especially where organs are concerned, this is very often what they see. So as you can see here, everything that passes through the lung, all those lines that pass through the lungs can affect the lungs, or they can be a sign of lung problems. Here, you got stomach and intestines. So if you have puffiness down there, it's usually some kind of water retention or inflammation in and around the intestinal area. Sometimes it's undigested food, sometimes it's undigested emotion, right? So again, you can see the kidneys in the ears, the liver at the temples, gallbladder here, liver here, pancreas and spleen, okay? So this again is just another quick and easy way to reference that everything is interconnected, okay? This would be more of an elemental map of what these things look like. But again, not really as immediately useful as the things we covered up to this point. So I'm going to go back to this and open the chat for people to see. Which were the dimples on? Dimples on the chin are usually related to fear or some kind of repressed fear. So they're usually in this area here. Okay, so is everybody with me so far, or is everybody getting this okay? Do you guys need that link for the NLP class again? You can resolve this through any of the ways I've talked about. You can resolve it through magic frame, color breathing, reframing, NLP work, holographic memory resolution. Any of them will work. Usually the process we teach is a synergy. It's an integrative approach. So it utilizes most of them or all of them synergistically towards a single outcome. This is one of the classes that is the integrative class that we're doing next month in Las Vegas is where all of this stuff comes together in a really powerful way, but it's geared towards therapy. So if your emphasis is not therapeutic, this is probably not the best class for you to take. If you're influenced in attraction, relationships, seduction, professional influence, or things of that nature, we have other classes that you can attend, but I would not recommend the Vegas class if you're not some kind of therapist or coach or social worker or something like that. Okay, so next one I want to talk about is a variant of the joy line we talked about. Remember we said joy starts at the outer canthus and works upward. But sometimes when a person has a joy line that extends from the outer canthus and it starts to travel beyond the boundary of that eyebrow, now you've got what the Chinese term as pathological joy. We would call it mania, hyperactivity, or some form of bipolar disorder. When somebody would ask me about a certain president. When you look at their face and you see lines that travel up past the eyebrows, these are the kind of people who are up at 3 o'clock in the morning tweeting, right? They tend to have a very, very aggressive outlook. They also tend to be megalomaniacs a little bit. So this could, but we don't really, this is really just a point of somebody who has extreme manic episodes. It could be manic and prone of bipolar. It could be megalomania. It could be delusions of grandeur. Again, all these things are forms of toxic joy. Okay. So again, if the lines are just coming up and stop before the eyebrow, it's healthy. They have a healthy amount of joy in their life. If it travels up past the eyebrow, now you're looking at mania. You're looking at somebody who's extreme personality issues, okay? Now, sometimes you'll see people with lines that kind of go diagonally up their head. We call these transformation lines. And transformation lines almost always indicate somebody who went through a long, dark night of the soul and came out on the other side of it with an epiphany or a set of revelations. And when they've had those revelations that changed their life forever, changed who they were or going to be forever, they'll get these lines that often manifest as diagonal lines radiating from around the third eye or upwards from the gallbladder liver area. And so when you see these are people who you can literally say you went through a very, very dark time in your life, maybe more than one, and came out of it on the other side with some life-changing understandings and transformations and revelations. And more often than not, you'll say, oh yeah, and they'll know exactly what you're talking about because they'll go right to it. They'll transderivational search right to it, and they'll just unpack it that way, okay? Allegra says, I don't have delusions of grandeur. It's just going to be grand. Okay. So you with me so far? Yes? Yes or yes? Okay, cool. All right. Let's see here. Back to my chart. Okay. So now, last but not least, in terms of the official map, there's other markings that aren't on this map that we could talk about, but these are the big ones. Finally, we're going to talk about this area right here. When we talk about reading faces, and we're going to cover this area in depth during the virtual training, August 6th, 7th, and 8th. By the way, we also have a level 2 face reading class that's coming up in December. And if you attend the virtual face reading class, you will qualify to attend level 2, which takes you even deeper. So if you're fascinated by face reading, you find it useful, and you want to continue to study and learn and grow in the face reading practice, you're invited, after you've taken level 1, you're invited to take level 2 in December, and that will be a live event in Las Vegas. So yeah, anyway, so when we look at this area, we call this area the seat of the stamp. Sometimes also referred to as Father's blessing. And there's a lot of things about a person that this area tells us. Functionally, first and foremost, when you look at the number of lines in this area, if you see 2 lines like you see here, what you're seeing is somebody who suffers from irritation, annoyance, temper, otherwise known as impatience. Functionally, these people are always in a hurry. They always want you to get to the point, and they tend to have anger issues directed at father figures, or authority figures. These people do not like to be told what to do. They're often impatient. They're prone to flares of temper. If you see somebody, hold on a second. Why is that doing that? What the heck? Why can't I get my eraser back? Oh, that's why. Hold on a second, I gotta erase this. Okay, it's the wrong eraser. There we go, okay. So I'm jumping back and forth between 2 different dashboards. So when you look at a person's area here and you don't see 2 lines, you see 3. Now you're looking at somebody who, for the most part, has learned to manage their temper. They can manage it. It no longer controls them. So 2 lines equals a loss of control. 3 lines equals diagnosis of control. Yeah, DG is saying if the typical parental roles were switched and dad was the stay-at-home mom while mom worked, does the diagnosis switch too? It can. Back in the ancient times when families were pretty classical, it was almost always considered the father's area. But now it's whoever holds that dominant role. Nico's asking, what does 1 line mean? Well, Nico, we're getting to that. Stay with us, okay? But I want you to understand what 2 lines mean and what 1 line means. When we see people now who are exhibiting, let me move this out of the way. Why are you doing that? That's, okay, hold on a second. I'm getting confused here between, okay. Oops. All right, so when we look at people and we see a single line, oops. One single line down the center of that forehead, what you're seeing is commonly referred to as suspended needle. Suspended needle is indicative of boundary issues with the father figure. Now let me explain this, because this is one of those times where we have to understand the directions people's lives can take from the same stimulus. You'll remember earlier we talked about people who have disempowerment lines. At some point in their life, they experienced somebody violating their boundaries. You guys remember that? Yes or no? You guys remember that? Okay. And what we said was, in that moment, when that person stood up for themselves and they pushed back against that violation, the person they were pushing back against got even madder, even more aggressive, and the person went from standing up for themselves to trying to make up or appease the other person for that. And so they become very, very supplicative. They start trying to find ways to please, to make things right, and that process continues, right? Contrast that when you have suspended needle, or the bigger version, suspended sword, what you've got is somebody who experienced a boundary violation, usually from the dominant parent, which would be the father energy. And what happened in that moment is when that parent violated that boundary, was overbearing, was, you see this a lot in rebellious kids who get thrown out of their house. What happened was that teenager or that child said no, and they fought back in some way. They pushed back, they fought back, they expressed their anger, and they got punished for it. They got punished for it, kind of like the appeaser did. But the trauma of that pushback, of that punishment, was so powerful that the unconscious mind basically said, yes, Lisa, it could be the mother. The unconscious mind basically said, I'm too dangerous. I can't express, I'm too dangerous to express that level of energy. This could happen. Let's say that you got angry at somebody and you hit them, right? And you went to jail, right? Maybe this person had it coming, whatever. You hit them, you went to jail, you got punished for expressing that energy, expressing that anger. You will get a mark here. A lot of times it's rebellious teenagers fighting back against their parents. Sometimes it's against some authority figure or organization. But what happened in that moment was they expressed their energy, they expressed their anger, and they got punished for it. And they made a decision in that moment that I am never going to get that powerful or express that level of energy ever again. You understand the distinction? In one version, the person lapses into appeasement behavior. In another, the person lapses into, I'm cutting off my power. This is as far as I go. I'll never go any further. When that happens, you'll get a single line down the center of that forehead. Now, in terms of empowerment, in terms of golden path, in terms of actualizing your potential, a line here will picture frame move it. It can. It absolutely can. What this means is, at some point in your life, you are going to need that energy, and you will not be able to call upon it because you'll have blocked it from manifesting in your life. It will keep you from, it will manifest as an inability to move forward. Yeah, this whole area is called Father's Blessing. So a lot of father stuff or male energy stuff is located in this area. Okay. Mike Stern is saying, Brandon, is there still space in the class if I get the bundle? Brandon, you want to answer that for him? I don't know. Okay. Keep in mind that many times this may be one big cathartic response or maybe a bunch of little ones. I don't know how it's going to unpack for you, but you can unpack it. You can start doing that right away. Okay, so that's what that means. Now there's a lot more in this area. Again, if this is the scope of everything, we got less than this. Okay, so I hope you guys find this useful. Was this stuff that you think you feel is you can take out into the world and use? Cool. Okay, good. So I hope that I will see you on the virtual Facebook or virtual face reading training, and I hope you guys take advantage of this package just for reminders, just to remind you what you're getting. And again, if you thought this was good, you'll love the 3-day event. So here's what we got for you. You know, you're going to get the Secrets of Face Reading Home Study course, which includes the ways to clear this. Grant says I use it with clients. Excellent. Valued at $1,497. You're going to get the Identity by Design Hypnotherapy Home Study course, valued at $1,497. We're going to give that to you absolutely free. You're going to get the Vibrational Healing, Energy Healing, and Remote Influence Home Study course, valued at $1,497. We're going to throw in that People Reading for Fun and Profit 2-day intensive, $997 value. You're going to be getting it for free. You get that Lie to Me If You Dare, How to Catch Liars crash course, $97. And again, the 3-day virtual VIP face reading super ticket and the free video copies of the training to get that. Total value is actually $9,032.00. Total value today, our total, your cost today, if you want to grab it, is one low installment of just $997. And you can start downloading this stuff immediately. You can mix and match programs. If you've got some of these courses mentioned in the package and you want to substitute something out, Stephanie can help you with that. You get immediate instant access to these things. You get that face reading super ticket. If for some reason you can't make the face readings event coming up in November and you want to move it towards Golden Path in January, we will let you do that. Our super tickets do not expire. If you get it today, you have it until you use it, right? Now, this is a very specific ticket, so you have to use it for a Golden Path or a face reading class. But if you have to wait until January to get into a class, fine. If you want to use it for the face reading class we've got coming up in April, you can do that. You have it until you use it. It's transferable, and it starts today until you use it, okay? A lot of people love our VIP tickets because they're the most user-friendly way to get the trainings you want. And if you have questions, we will help you customize your programs, your packages, so that you get exactly the courses you need, because we have 3 variations on this available, and Stephanie or Brandon can help you go through that. Or you can break it down into 3 simple installments of just $399. Take as much time as you need to pay it off. Usually they're monthly installments. And yeah, so the payment link is also available. If you're interested, we have a few slots left for the NLP class. I believe that link is www.nlppower.com /events/2020 NLP Hypno LV. I think that's the link. I could be wrong, but if not, just reach out to Stephanie at 858-282-4663 or Stephanie at nlppower.com, and she will make sure that you get taken care of. I got to tell you, she didn't know I was going to say this, but what to tell Stephanie, cannot get her on the phone. Chances are if you cannot get her on the phone, it's because somebody else is already on the phone with her. Just keep calling. Remember that the VIP ticket is only good until I end the webinar today. After I log off, if you're not amongst the first 35 people to join in, you can still get the videos, but you don't get that VIP ticket. Okay, so that's, again, so when would now be a good time to make those arrangements and click those links? Stephanie, can we get that link again for folks? Oh, it's already, yeah, Stephanie will call you back. And that's the face reading bundle. Remember, you can customize them. You do have payment plans. And you can start downloading and watching that stuff today. And it's fun. There's a lot of fun stuff going on there. Okay, so while you guys are kind of finalizing that, I'm gonna go ahead and pull up my chair. And just so I understand you better, what questions do you have? What other questions can I answer for you? No questions? Oh, how do scars on the face affect reading? Very good. So scars always almost, let me go back to, let me pause the share for a second. Actually, let me just stop it. So scars almost always indicate blocked energy. And what's interesting, and this is where it gets into kind of a little bit of the woo-woo areas of face reading. Many times when you have a marking, if you look at the age markings on the face, women start on the right, then they go to the left ear, and then they come down the center of the forehead. Men start on the left, jump to the right, and then come down the center of the forehead. Many times when people have a scar or an issue, and it manifests, or they get that scar in an area that corresponds to an age they haven't reached yet, it indicates that at some point in that life, at that time period, something's going to happen. It's weird. In fact, I just had a gentleman, Jonathan, in my last face reading class. He came up to me and he asked, I have this mark here. Does it mean something? I said, yes. And I looked at where the age corresponds on his face, and I noticed it was in his 20s. And I said, have you had any accidents recently? And he said, well, yeah, 3 years ago. I said, how old are you? He said, 28. And I looked at the age map, and that scar was right at halfway through the age 26. He'd had that scar since he was a kid. So big scar over my left eye. So scars are always indicate some kind of an energy blockage. Now, depending on how self-conscious you become, how much you evolve yourself, how much of your shit you clear, if there's a marking that corresponds to a certain age that you haven't reached yet, depending on what you do prior to that reaching that point chronologically, you can mitigate it. You can turn a potentially catastrophic event into just a bump in the road, okay? And vice versa. Okay, so let me go back here. So yeah, where are Jing and Shen located on the face? You can monitor Shen primarily through the eyes and the light emanating from beneath the skin. Jing can be seen in the ears and the thickness and tensile strength of the ears, as well as the bony contours of the face. There's also hidden reservoirs of Jing. So anytime you have a bony lump, gaps in the teeth also indicate extra Jing. What do bags under the eyes mean? There's really two big meanings for bags under the eyes. The first one is usually unshed tears. If they're dark, it usually indicates adrenal fatigue or tired kidneys of some kind. But it's almost always a water metabolism issue of some kind, or a spleen issue, which is also water metabolism. So Claudette says, I have a big scar over my left eye. The first thing I would ask is, how old are you now? Was the scar there before the age? So this is right around late 20s, early 30s is right here, okay? Was the scar there before the age of 20 or 30? And what happened at that time period, right about 28 to about 31 or 32? What happened in your life right about that time, right? Where do you start on a person's face? That's a really great question. And the answer is twofold. It depends on how you're trained. If you're trained in the classical school of face reading, you start with the first feature that jumps out at you. Okay? If you're trained in the David school, you start with the hairline. You start with hairline. And shape of forehead. That's where you start. Okay? And the reason we do it this way is so that people can apply a systematic approach to identifying attributes and what they mean based on organic eye tracking patterns. In other words, if I'm going to do a classical face reading with you, the first thing I'm going to connect with you, I'm going to get rapport, and I'm going to fixate on whatever feature jumps out at me first. And I'm going to start unpacking that feature. And that's a very organic, intuitive process, right? And it leads me in a non-linear way of unpacking your stuff. If I'm profiling, in other words, I want to develop a personality profile, then I'm going to apply the systematic approach where I'm going to start with the hairline, the shape of the forehead, and I'm going to work down the front of the face based on organic eye tracking patterns. When people look at you, when they connect and talk to you, they do one of three things. They either focus and gaze at your eyes, they gaze on your eyes, and then they look at your mouth, or they just look at your mouth, I should say, or they go back and forth. They look at your eyes, they look at your mouth, they look at your eyes, they look at your mouth, and they just seesaw back and forth. So what I did when I developed my approach to profiling and using these things was I created a systematic approach. And as Paul puts it, the David Snyder approach, where the moment I walk up and I start profiling you, if I don't decide to do the intuitive approach, I'm going to just start at your hairline and the shape of your hairline, the shape of your forehead, the width and the distance, the three zones of the face, and I'm just going to go down. And I'm just going to start rattling off traits and putting together within 90 seconds a very powerful snapshot of you. That usually is about 80 to 90% or accurate better, right? How many people have done the in-class profiling where I say profile that face in 90 seconds, right? And we're accurate. It's really, really powerful. Both of them work. Don't get me wrong. Both of them work, but they have, one is based more on an organic kind of new agey spiritual side. The other one's more, these are the traits, these are what they mean. Just systematically create your profile from top to bottom, right? So I hope that answers your question. There was a question about, DG asked, how did you jump from NLP to TCM? What led you from one to the other? Honestly, it was a combination of wanting to get better at kicking butt and meeting chicks. I was led to each of these studies as a way of empowering one of those aspects of my life. And as I got deeper and deeper into them, I found out that there was a lot of overlap. There was a lot of things where they were the same. And so it all came down to those two words I began the webinar with, which was pattern recognition, right? And once you understand how to do it, especially when I started studying hermetics, I really started to understand that everything that's going on are patterns of principle that recur at every level of reality. And NLP was all about identifying the patterns and calibrating them. The martial arts I studied was all about identifying the patterns and unpacking the things that weren't obvious and dissecting and reverse engineering them. And TCM was all about pattern recognition. And NLP is all about calibrating and understanding how to observe people and infer things from that. The martial arts was all about reading people's energies and knowing where they're weak, where they're strong. TCM was all about diagnosing people based on patterns of health and energetic function. So they're all different aspects. That's why that diagram I showed you is so important. And we cover it really in depth. This diagram that I talked about is so important to understand our approach to change work. Oops. This is where everything, the martial arts, the NLP, the hypnosis, the face reading, the Chinese medicine, all of it comes together. And when you put them together in the right way and you understand it properly, you get a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts. And you come away with a systematic approach to influencing people interpersonally, yourself interpersonally, spiritually, metaphysically, manifesting, because all of these patterns are universal on the macro level and the micro level. And again, how did I get it? I don't know. Maybe I did something good in the past life. Maybe it's just part of my golden path. If it works for you, use it. If it adds value to your life, embrace it, grab it, jump in, go as far into this material as you want, and use it for what you want and need. But that's in a very long kind of circuitous way is the answer to your question, I hope. My eyebrows angled down. Does that mean I have empathy towards others? Yes, actually. There's a little bit more to it than that, but the short end of the stick is that, yes. Paul says, I just did one last night on Facebook. You did a reading? Yeah, I saw that. That's why I mentioned it. Elgo says, scar on my left eyebrow. What could it relate to? I'm 46 to the date, well, yesterday, and it has been there forever. Left eyebrow? Did anything significant happen between 28 and 33? Any significant events happen? Yeah, you move countries. Okay, there you go, right? And the scar was probably there long before you hit your 30s. True, not true? Yeah, forever, yeah. Excellent. So the fact that there's so much overlap that resonates with recognized same patterns in different modalities, would this point to soul contracts we sign which lead us to repeat? Yeah, if you embrace the idea of pre-birth or pre-heaven agreements that you've made about fulfilling a certain thing or doing a certain behavior, yeah. But a lot of it can also be passed down genetically, lineally. My purpose lines are pretty good. They can always get better. Susan says, I have an old scar on my right eyebrow. Okay. Did anything significant happen between the ages of 28 and 30? When you have a scar on an age that hasn't happened yet, it means something's coming. Something's waiting for you at that age. And depending on how you go about unpacking it, it can be a major life-changing issue, or it can be just a little hiccup or fart in the breeze, metaphorically speaking, depending on what you do ahead of time. Okay. All right. How are lines passed down genetically, or emotional scars passed? Well, if you research generational trauma, which is the term they're using now, the science shows us that trauma that our grandparents experienced can be passed down up to 9 generations down the bloodline. They've seen this in fruit flies. They've seen this with Holocaust survivors. A scar above the left lip means the same thing, Fiona. It's you got to look at the chronological orientation and make extrapolations. Yeah, the Chinese say when you fix something in yourself, you fix it 12 generations back and 12 generations forward. The science I've seen shows 9 generations, but it could be more, right? Again, the Chinese were very, very observant, and they took the long approach with a lot of these things. That could be an indication to suicide, maybe. Yeah, again, here's the thing we need to understand, is that when you look at a marking, you know something happened, but you don't know what. You know it probably wasn't pleasant, though, in most cases. So when you see a scar or a marking, some moles are good, some dimples are good, but as a rule, you know something did happen or something is going to happen, but you really can't tell what it is. You may get an intuitive download about what it might be, but that's where you have to be more of an investigator rather than a profiler. Or what I'm saying is, someone who's saying this is what it is, as opposed to this is what it might be, right? Okay. It's a predictive element. It means something is in your timeline waiting for you at that age. It's literally exactly what I meant, what I said. Okay. And we can talk about, do you have a graphic on age? Yes, I do. I do have a graphic. But by and large, it won't do you any good because it won't be on, you won't be able to see it long enough to memorize it. But for most, the quick and easy way to do it, if you're female, remember that you start on the right to age 7, then you jump to the left from 8 to 13, and then down the center, 14 to 30, okay, 40, 50, 60. So when you start, and the lines zigzag, that's, which is why I don't talk about that, because it's, and you have to reverse it for males. Males will start on the left, go to the right, and then down the center, and they're exact opposite. So the best thing to do is learn the basic landmarks. If you're male, start on the left. If you're female, start on the right. 0 to 7, 8 to 13, 14 to 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. That's the easiest, or 40s, 50s, 60s. That's the easiest way to extrapolate what age a marking might occur. Yes, you can memorize the age map. I don't. I probably will at some point. Is that in the Facebook I talk about? Yes. Lillian Bridges, Face Reading in Chinese Medicine. Right? That's the standard textbook for my class. 90% or more of the information in my face reading manuals is drawn from that book, as well as annotations for others. Outside of the eyebrow would be sometime in your late 20s or early 30s. Okay, unless it's all the way out here, in which case it might be in your 60s or 70s, right? Okay, so once again, for those of you who want to, we'll do this more November 6th, 7th, and 8th on our virtual face reading bootcamp. I hope you've gotten a lot out of this. Once again, last call for the face reading super package, where you get the Secrets of Face Reading home study course valued at $1,497. You get the Identity by Design hypnotherapy home study course valued at $1,497, absolutely free. You're going to get the vibrational healing and remote influence super package, $1,497. Yours absolutely free. People Reading for Fun and Profit 2-day intensive, $997 value, free. Lie to Me If You Dare, How to Catch Liars crash course, $97 value. And that if you're one of the first 35 to register today, you're going to get that free VIP super ticket for our 3-day face reading virtual boot camp, November 6th, 7th, and 8th, 2020. It's total value of $9,485. Total value today, our total cost today, if you wanted to grab it, is just one low installment of $997, or you can break that up into 3 easy payments of just $399. So that's all I got for you. I want to thank you all for hanging out. Your questions, as always, were amazing. And honestly, getting a chance to hang out and talk and share these things with you is one of the most thrilling and fulfilling aspects of my week. And I always look for excuses to do more of it. For those of you who would like to have more of an ongoing relationship with me, we've just launched 3 private levels on our YouTube channel. We have the gold, the platinum, and the diamond level. The gold level, the diamond level is our I want to work with David personally level. And what it is that on the 3rd Saturday of every month, you get to come in and you get to, I literally go around the room. You'll be part of our virtual mastermind. I'll literally go around the room and say, Elle, what do you want to learn? Miko, what do you want to learn? Susan, what do you want to learn? Allegra, what do you want to learn? Paul, what do you want to learn? Claudette, what do you want to learn? I'm going to write those things on the board. I'm going to look at them, see where they all connect, create a lesson plan on the spot. And then for the next 4 hours, I'm going to drill you on those skills until you can do them in your sleep. Okay. In addition to that, you'll get everything that's in our platinum program, our platinum YouTube program, which is 2 live stream events, private live stream events a month. Plus you get access to our Facebook groups and you get access to our 10-year NLP Mastermind Mentoring Archive. That's the platinum level. This only the diamond is $99 a month, and you get all that stuff plus a 15% discount on every single one of our products and services, including our webinar specials. So if you are a member of the Diamond YouTube channel, you can take an additional 15% off the price of this webinar package if you're a member in good standing. Okay. You also have the diamond level or the platinum level, which doesn't have the hands-on training, but it does have 2 live streams with me a month. First one is a special topic webinar where I literally pick a topic like lie detection, romance, secrets of personal transformation, yada, yada, yada. And I do a 2-hour event where I teach you that stuff. I answer your questions. And that's your personal time with me getting lectured on specific topics that I choose. And on the 3rd Monday of every month, there'll be another live event where it's an Ask Me Anything, where you can literally ask me questions you missed on the first live event, or you can just ask me anything you want to know about. Face reading, changing people, influence, dating, attraction, whatever it is. It's 3 hours of just you and me. That's the platinum level of the YouTube channel. And then for those of you who just want to have access to content that's never been released and early bird access to excerpts from some of our live events, then you can do our gold level, which is just $9.99 a month. The platinum, by the way, is probably the best value unless you want the hands-on training with me, which is still a bargain. So diamond is $99.99 a month. Platinum is $24.99 per month. Starting immediately. And then gold is $9.99 a month. And you get the shout outs, you get a free thank you from me, you get early bird access to much of our unreleased content, as well as the NLP Mastermind archives. So you can binge watch 10 years of content that nobody has ever seen. So if you're interested in, in those kinds of things, in addition to coming to our face reading classes, I invite you to check that out and go ahead and sign up for it. Give it a try. Give us your feedback on it, especially. Tell us what we can do better. Tell us how we can make it even more of a value for you, because we want you here. We really love and respect and enjoy having you as part of our community. You are the most important reason that we do what we do. And so anything we can do to really make this experience here on NLP, our Planet David, or the Transformation Superhighway, we're going to do it. So I want to thank you all for coming out. I love you all. We'll talk to you very, very soon. Stephanie, you want to throw that link in? Last call for one of those VIP super tickets. It's worth it. It's completely worth it at full price, which will be at least $14.97, probably closer to $19.50 if you wait till the last minute. And we'll talk to you soon. Good night. God bless.